This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome once again from Johannesburg, in South Africa. My name, of course, Evan Jansen. The show, as always, is live and we're broadcasting from our studios here in Auckland Park. Don't forget, between 9 and 12 every weekday morning, we're also live on YouTube. You can watch us back on demand there anytime during the day or even on our YouTube channel live. Now, of course, the ratings agency, Standard & Poor, they're in town. We ask you this question. Yes, it's a serious question. Rating downgrades. Have they become a political tool? What are your views on this as we stare into the precipice of junk status? I can tell you that all the other BRICS countries are in the same boat, and that paints a rather grim picture. Anyhow, let's go to Elvis for the morning's news.
Should there be junk in our trunk? South Africa will know its fate on whether it has avoided junk status later today. The country is now ready for the 2060 municipal elections with a 26.3 million of eligible voters. And suspended National Police Commissioner Ria Pierre to launch her final bid to hold on to her job at the Claassen Board of Inquiry. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning to you.
Elvis, a very good morning to you. It's been a very big and very busy morning already, and quite a lot in the sports for today. In fact, let me greet our viewers as well. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports for today.
Van Niekerk, those flailing arms of Van Niekerk, keeping clear by a metre, comes towards the line, watch the clock, it's a strong run, 44-0.
South African athletes headlining in Rome as Wade van Niekerk, the men's 400-metre world champion, lays down a marker at the Rome Diamond League meet.
Por eso sí que no sabía.
Global soccer star Lionel Messi denies any knowledge of tax fraud, claiming he dedicated himself only to playing soccer.
And that's it.
World number ones, Serena Williams and Novak Djokovic, are through to the semi-finals of the French Open. As you can see, we've got quite a lot happening on the sports front, but for now, it's back to the main desk for the news.
The Independent Electoral Commission has certified the voters' roll for the 2060 municipal elections with a 26.3 million voters. Now, that number has increased by 2.6 million from the 2011 municipal elections. Registration for parties and independent candidates contesting the August 30 elections closed yesterday. The IEC hailed its online registration system for candidates as a success, well, despite some glitches.
It's a first for the IEC and for the continent. Online registration for candidates contesting the elections. However, it wasn't a smooth run.
As you'd expect, any system new will have glitches, but not anything fundamental so as to imperil the ability of parties to make the submissions they should.
However, Black First, Land First didn't get that opportunity to register and now want the courts to intervene.
We believe that it's unfair. We believe it goes against the fundamental rights to participate.
You've got to observe 14 days before the application can be considered. That 14 days is necessary to allow for those who may have an objection against the registration of the party.
For now, the IEC has to consolidate all the submissions, and for the first time in the history of municipal elections, will the ANC have competition in every single ward from both the DA and the EFF.
It's a key indicator. That's a very important thing because South Africans now go into elections with a choice between two, really, between corruption and a non-corrupt government.
We went through a process, a very intensive and thorough process, which was necessary, of course, that made us to get candidates that we can take back to the community.
While smaller parties are not contesting every ward and municipality.
All the metros, we are going to go for it. And we are definitely sure that this time we are well prepared.
We cannot. It is a municipal election. It's very difficult to get a candidate everywhere and to contest everywhere.
Meanwhile, it was a nail-biting moment for the ANC as it tried to submit just before the 5 p.m. deadline. This while aggrieved members protested outside the party's headquarters.
Others are here because they don't accept the outcome of an appeal process. Okay? Because some appealed and they are told, listen, this is not a basis for appeal.
The IEC is adamant those who missed the deadline will not make it onto the ballot papers. Aldrin Simpier, SABC News, Johannesburg.
A confident Gauteng African National Congress says it will fill the 94,000 capacity F&B Stadium in Soweto tomorrow. Now, this despite some dissent among the rank and file, with some members and supporters threatening to put a damper on the event. The party will be launching its provincial manifesto.
It's going to be a mammoth task, filling the close to 95,000 seats in the country's premier stadium. But the ANC Gauteng leadership believes it's done enough to rally the troops. It's been on the ground these past few weeks to drum up support for its manifesto launch.
They are already working hard, these volunteers, activists and supporters, for a decisive victory for the ANC on the 3rd of August. The members and supporters of the ANC in Gauteng province are highly energized, very motivated and ready for the rally. We expect to pack the stadium to full capacity.
But the councillor candidate lists are a hot potato.
Part of that is to communicate with all branches where their preferred candidate was not endorsed at all those levels. And I must say that those instances are very few.
That unhappiness played out on the doorsteps of the ANC headquarters.
While these supporters say they're willing to take it a step further and may boycott the launch of the Gauteng Manifesto on Saturday if their concerns are not addressed.
We don't want the councillor in our ward, and we're not going to the FNB. We want our demands met.
They chose a councillor for us, which we don't want.
6.2 million registered voters, the highest in the country. The ANC has appealed for political tolerance in the run-up to the elections on the 3rd of August. Crisalda Lewis, SABC News.
Now, the legal team of suspended National Police Commissioner Rea Piecha is expected to wrap up its final arguments at the Claassen Board of Inquiry in Pretoria this morning. Evidence leaders have accused Piecha of violating the country's constitution and breaching her oath of office. They believe she should be held responsible for the deaths of 34 miners who were shot by police in August 2012 during a strike at Lonmin's platinum mine in Marikana. The evidence leaders are calling for her removal as the police boss. Piecha's team has, for its part, stressed that it's important to distinguish whether events at Marikana were under her control or that of the Northwest Provincial Commissioner, General Sukiswa Mbombo, who has since retired. Now, in financial news, South Africa will know later today whether we have managed to avoid junk status. Global ratings agency Standard & Poor's will announce their decision this evening. Now, they currently rank this country one notch above the sub-investment grade or so-called junk status.
S&P are perhaps have demonstrated over the years they're not quite as well disposed towards us as Moody's have been. So, you know, they'll cast a very critical eye. They've got a very long established presence in South Africa. They've done their homework, and I'm sure that when they come out, they will present what they think is a fair appraisal of the situation. And as I say, it's after hours. We have taken the view that we'll probably avoid downgrade as well. We agree with the Finance Minister. And what they'll maybe say is along the lines of Moody's, let's give you 6 months. Let's see all of these good intentions that you've been talking about translated into something very, very tangible.
Now, many South Africans worry that the country is about to be condemned to junk status by the ratings agency, and that's why we're asking you this question this morning. It will be in your screen shortly in terms of the rating agency. But there are also concerns that the economy is about to fall into a recession. The situation is also being exacerbated by a terrible drought, the most difficult domestic economic situation since the advent of democracy, and the most unpredictable international circumstances for many years. Now, for more on this, Eben spoke to SABC's business news anchor Frances Hurd and first asked her what the credit rating agencies really are.
They are there to give each country, and they also do it for companies, things like that, a grade. Now, that grade is a mark of your credit worthiness. So in simple, it's if you've got a great grade, there's the triple A's right at the top. It means that if somebody lends you money, you are likely to pay back. No problem at all. If you head towards junk status, it means that you are becoming a credit risk.
Yeah.
So investors use these grades to decide where they will put their money. If you've got a bad credit rating, it means that you may not pay them back. So that is the danger. And some investors will still invest in a country, in a company with a lower credit rating. But then they will demand huge interest rates, which is another problem.
Now, post-democracy, we've been told here in South Africa that our economy's been doing well because we've been paying our debt and doing well on that score. Why then are why are we facing the prospect of junk status?
The problem is that we did take a counter-cyclical stance. We were very careful in the good years. We saved. In the bad years, then instead of pulling back, we could actually spend.
Yeah.
But remember that the world has been in a state of recovery after the crisis. But that recovery isn't happening as people hoped. So we're having to spend more and more, and we have got ourselves deeper into debt. As a country, we've taken on more debt. Our debt is soaring. We usually do it as a percentage of GDP, which is the total economy, everything produced in terms of goods and services. We're heading towards 50% of GDP, which is a level we haven't been at for a while. So we're getting deeper into debt. Now, that is okay if the economy is growing, because then you know, okay, we'll grow our way out of this. Eventually, you know, enough tax revenues will come in, we'll be able to pay that debt. Unfortunately, we've got higher debt than usual and low growth. So that is why the credit rating agencies are starting to worry about our ability to pay back.
Now, there are those in South Africa that have become quite suspicious about the credit ratings agencies of the world. Some are even accusing some of them of having a political agenda. How do you see this? Is this even possible in the world of business?
I think some of those suspicions do have a good founding. Now, remember, the main concern about these credit rating agencies, there are three main ones in the world. They were grading those subprime mortgages, those assets that puts America into huge trouble, as AAA. They got it wrong. We then had a crisis that started in the US that spread around the world. So yes, sometimes they get things wrong. I don't know about the political agenda. I keep on asking them when I speak to any credit rating agency, are you careful? Because, you know, this has implications for us as a country, and there are these claims. They would say that their only constituency are the investors. They are trying not. So I don't know, it's up to people to believe them or not, but they shouldn't be involved in any country-specific politics. They should be talking to those investors only.
Now, for a group that wields so much power, fiscal power, that is at the end of the day, who governs the ratings agencies, or are they a law unto themselves, as if it looks to the man in the street at the moment?
They're not actually, and remember, we're not the only ones with these concerns. So the EU has put in certain laws. For instance, they know that the rating agencies can be destabilizing if they're always downgrading a company or country. So those rating agencies are only allowed to pronounce, I think it's at a max 3 times a year. The reason why S&P and Fitch are pronouncing on South Africa right now is because they are governed by certain laws in the EU. So there are some attempts to ensure that they can't destabilize too much. But but the EU and America does accept for now that they perform an important function for investors.
There any chance of we seeing BRICS bloc countries' credit ratings popping up in the future, and investors looking at that with maybe a bit of seriousness?
Well, BRICS, our fellow BRICS nations, except for China. China is still in the A's. The others are already in junk status. Brazil, remember, Brazil's economy is just really going through the mill right now. India is like us, sitting just above junk status, which actually is sub-investment grade. And we can talk about the implications of going into junk. But India just there, Brazil, Russia as well in junk status already. So these economies suffering. And it must be said that some investors ignore the rating agencies. They have power, but the investors can actually ignore what they say. Still lend money. When America, when their rating agency when their rating dropped a little bit, actually they benefited. So it's not that this is the be-all and end-all, but it does guide some investors, especially for smaller countries like us, where not everybody knows about us.
Francis, you should put that out in the mainstream media, because we don't hear about that in any of our newspapers. It's simply doom and gloom where you see this. I wanted to ask you quickly, before we wrap up, how do we compare to the rest of SADC and maybe sub-Saharan African countries when it comes to our credit rating?
To be honest, I'm not too sure about our comparison to Africa. We are often compared to our fellow BRICS nations, to other emerging markets. The rand is almost seen as a litmus test of how emerging markets are doing. We know the Zimbabwean economy, not a good comparison, not doing well. They even moved to the US dollar, so their currency doesn't react to things like this. So I wish I could give you a more conclusive answer. But we have some of the fastest growing countries in the world in sub-Saharan Africa. We have Nigeria that was doing well, but remember, they are suffering because of oil revenues.
Commodity economies are battling.
So we're not the only ones battling, but we're definitely, in terms of growth, a drag on this region of the world.
Final question. What is going to happen later today? What's your gut feel?
I think it's close to call. For a while, Reuters did a poll, and most economists said that we would be going down into junk status with S&P, because they not only have us one notch above junk, but they have us on a negative outlook, which basically means you're on watch for a downgrade. If you do anything wrong, it means you're going to go down. Since then, there's been a bit of positivity. We saw Pravin Gordhan and the efforts of government did change Moody's stance. They didn't downgrade us earlier. So that's a bit of positivity has crept in. So if I have to make a decision, I think we're going to come out of this unscathed. We won't go down yet, but there's a possibility we could be downgraded in December. But at least it gives us 6 months to really try and do what we can.
Business News anchor Francis Hurt with Eben a little bit earlier. Now, ratings agency Standard & Poor's will announce its review of South Africa's credit rating today amid fears of a looming downgrade. Both Standard & Poor's and Fitch have the country's credit rating at one notch above junk status. The rand threatened, or rather weakened, against the dollar on Friday as credit ratings downgrade fears weighed in on sentiment, coupled with subdued risk appetite globally as investors prepare for a likely hike in United States interest rates. For more on what we can expect, we are now joined via Skype by the Chief Economist at Investment in Solutions, Lesiba Motata. Mr. Motata, very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Very well, Squire. And you? Well, we're sitting on the precipice of a downgrade. Are we expecting junk in our trunk?
Junk in our trunk. Well, if you look at what the market has been doing, in fact, yesterday, even overnight, you'll appreciate that the Asian markets opened before us. And if there's anything that the market sniffs of an outcome in SA, they will sell off. But we've seen with the Asian Open, the rand is actually steady. We're not seeing significant depreciation. Yesterday, amongst the basket of currencies, we have seen the rand doing well. With all this information, along with the one that you see in the bond markets, it suggests that I don't think rating agencies today, Standard & Poor's, is going to downgrade us. They may sound hawkish because there's still a few things to sort out, but not today.
Now, how specifically are global methodologies tailored to the South African environment in coming to a conclusion whether one should be downgraded or not?
Very much. So they do a thorough job. Remember, these ratings are solicited. In other words, we pay rating agencies to give us a credit quality assessment. So very thorough. They've got local analysts on the ground. They chat to the policymakers from the highest level, and they have a few methodologies that they use, which includes looking at institutions. And I think SA will get a huge tick on that one. An independent central bank, even with the machinations on top, the National Treasury remains a world-class institution. They look at growth. Growth is problematic. On a per capita basis, we can see that SA is struggling, and there is the concern. But we ought to also just remember, they also look at the term structure of debt. What I mean by that is 90% of that which is issued by the National Treasury is in rands. And there we have a better rating, which is firmly in investment grade.
So, on what basis then are essentially non-quantitative elements? You talked about government policy and strategy, but what about policymakers' commitment to financial restraint being evaluated and quantified? Does that play a role?
Very much so it does, because right now, SA, 14% of expenditure is on the wage bill. In other words, it's related to consumption expenditure. That has been flagged very much by rating agencies, especially when you don't have growth coming through. It just means that on the 10% of foreign denominated debt, one ought to readjust the expectation of what the rating is. In fact, when you look at financial markets on that measure, on the 10%, the so-called junk on BBB minus, we are likely to be downgraded by year end, even if it's left unchanged today, for those reasons of low growth, expenditure that remains elevated. In fact, for R1 earned, 12 cents is paying interest on the debt, which is the fastest growing expenditure component in SA, which is problematic.
Now, this might be perhaps a layman's question, but do the ratings agency actually know what they are doing?
Wow, it's a fair question. I mean, these are the same rating agencies who, before the financial crisis, had AAA ratings on very risky assets, who even after the 08 situation swung to the extreme end and continually downgraded countries in Europe, which were better. In fact, they exacerbated the so-called sovereign debt crisis in Europe. Now, so with that, they have a credibility issue. They ought to actually work themselves back into gaining some of that. And we ought to just remember, this is just an opinion, right? It's an opinion from these three rating agencies, and investors often look past these type of outcomes in certain arrangements. Admittedly, in investment mandates, there are minimum rating required, but those are normally on the rand-denominated debt, the domestic debt. And there, I don't think we are risking any downgrades or be dismayed if Fitch comes out with Fitch or Standard & Poor's comes out with the rating that either changes the outlook or even the credit quality of the rand-denominated debt.
But Mr. Matata, after all was said and done, is there perhaps a conspiratory notion that the ratings agencies are using downgrades as a political tool?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that there are some corners in the world who will have that suspicion. But think about it. If you're an open economy, small, with a current account deficit, which is 4.1% of GDP, which SA is, which ought to be financed. You need this flows into equity markets. You need this flows into bond markets. You even need brick and mortar investment, FDI. All those investors need some independent assessment if a country is like us, small, open with a current account deficit as large as we have, in order to make decisions that are consistent with the potential return they could earn in such investment. I do think that we need rating agencies. I do think we need to listen to what they say, unless we pay down everything we have in terms of debt. We don't have a current account. We have a surplus one. But at this stage, we very much need their opinion.
Mr. Motata, thank you so much for your time. That was Lasiba Motata, Chief Economist at Investment Solutions, chatting to us about that. So we're asking you the question, though. What do you make of this? Hey, we're on the precipice, right on the edge of a possible downgrade. But these ratings agencies and the possible downgrades, are they being used as a political tool? That's the question to you. It's on your screen right now. I want to know from you on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on our Facebook page. You can like us on the Facebook page, and then you can post your comment. But for more, it's over to Eben.
The smoking gun, Elvis, that's what we always have to look at, the smoking gun. Russia, junk status. Brazil junk status. India like us,
on the precipice.
On the precipice. South Africa on the precipice. The only one they can't touch is China. Why? China holds more than half of the American debt.
All right, there you go. So that's there's the smoking gun.
Right there. So what do you think? Is it a political tool? We think it's a fair question to ask of you. What do you think with regards to today's possible downgrade? Are downgrades being used as a political tool? Have a look at around the world. Why is it the wick is being turned up on the BRICS bloc? Anyhow, let's take a look at what happens on social media today. Now, this is a very nice hashtag that's going around. It says, #Waste Stops With Me. This, of course, in the run-up to World Environmental Day. That's on Sunday, the 5th of June. Now, Miss Earth, South Africa, she's out in full force with teams cleaning up Johannesburg streets. I just love it. I think it's a fantastic initiative. Then, the theme for this year is focusing on crimes against wildlife. So, have a look at that. There's Miss Earth, South Africa, on this weekend of the 4th and 5th of June. Go out and clean your local park, why don't you? Now, the other hashtag that's very much around, it's the hashtag Piega. Suspended National Police Commissioner Ria Piega. She's set to launch her final bid to hold on to a job at the Klassen Board of Inquiry this morning. Legal teams will present final arguments today. Then some sports news, or news for the sports fans. They call him the tax dodger now. Hashtag Messi. Barcelona and Argentinian football star Lionel Messi, he's appearing in the Barcelona Magistrates Court today on allegations of tax fraud. He claims to have known nothing, as he had no involvement in his own finances and blames it all on his dad. Hashtag Messi / the tax dodger. And today, the funeral of the much-loved gorilla Harambe, who was famously shot in a Cincinnati zoo early in the week. Well, it's taking place today. Harambe was killed after a 4-year-old toddler fell into its enclosure. The zookeepers were unsure if the gorilla was going to harm the child, while others say that he was just trying to protect the child. Now, this comes in cartoon form at Forbes Tech. Quite an interesting depiction. There have been lots of memes. I really liked some of the memes that were out there. Of course, why are we in outrage over the gorilla when hundreds of children are being shot at the minute? Tune in at 10:30 today for a review of the weekly trends with Roy Africa. Tonya Kuri will be here. She'll be talking to us about that and other stories on the social media pages. Now let's take a look at the picture of the day. This one from Nigel Woodcock. Now, it's made the news all around. He says, disgusting. I hope that the Thai tourist industry takes a commensurate hit. Hashtag Thailand, hashtag Tigers. There you see our picture of the day. Now, we're going to send Elvis to Thailand next week. He's going to investigate this very story while on holiday there. No, it's just a joke. Elvis is taking some time out. He's actually supporting the Thai tourism industry from next week. He's taking a little bit of a break. Now, we asked you yesterday, question, is it too difficult to run a small business here in South Africa? Let's take a look at some of the tweets that have been coming in on our Twitter page, but also on Facebook. This is a Facebook tweet, I think. Pete Meyer says, business impossible. No one even wants to listen to renewable clean electricity projects that can double our country's need. How about that? Pete Meyer, you have to keep knocking those doors down, my friend. That's the nature of the beast. What are some of the other tweets that we have with regards to our live comment? Yes? We don't have those up, unfortunately, but let's take a look at what's the front pages of the newspapers around the globe. We'll start in Europe, as we always do. The Times there reports that millionaire businessmen have been increasing the price of drugs bought by the National Health Services by up to 12,500%. So not only the case on the African continent, it seems. Then the New York International Times says torrential rains have caused deadly flooding in central and northeastern France this week, forcing the evacuation of thousands of people, some on boats and kayaks, and threatening works of art stored in Paris's most celebrated museum. Finally, in China, the South China Morning Post reports that Hong Kong Lender Bank of East Asia said yesterday that it's cutting 180 jobs in the city, accounting for about 3.8% of its workforce there, as volumes of equities traded on the Hong Kong exchange slumped. Let's take a look at some of those comments that we had with regards to our question of the day. We love to hear your views. Unati is a real fan of Newsroom. He's always tweeting, talking to us. That's why we always put you up, Unati. We love to hear from you. If you want to start a business and go get assistance, you will be sent from pillar to post. Hashtag start up small business. That was what we were talking about yesterday. Lovely comment there, Unati. Then Sello says, this Katu guy is supposed to be our leader in youth development, but we don't know him. That, of course, is the CEO of the National Youth Development Agency, Katu, we had in yesterday. You know who he is now, so you can follow up with him, Sello. And, of course, the Sunati once again. The NYDA is not rolling out anything. I don't even know it exists anymore. I put that to Katu yesterday, the CEO of the NYDA. He says, well, there was a time when the organisation was in a bit of trouble, but not anymore. Then at SABC Newsroom, it's not easy. All big businesses and government don't want to give us business and resources. We can't grow at this pace, says MJ. Those are some of our tweets, live tweets to the question that we asked you yesterday. Of course, we want you to interact with us because your view is important on the show. We love that scenario. Even send us pictures. We'll put it up. Now, let's take a quick look at what's happening in the courts here in South Africa today. Of course, in Pretoria, where Anwar Dramat and his two co-accused are expected to appear in the Pretoria Magistrates Court. Dramat will appear together with suspended Gauteng Hawks boss, Major General Shadrack Sibea, as well as Captain Leslie Maluleke, over their alleged involvement in the illegal rendition of Zimbabwean immigrants in 2010 and 11 rather. Then down in the Eastern Cape, where the suspect who allegedly murdered a 26-year-old taxi driver in the Mthatha CBD last week is expected to appear in the Magistrates Court there. He faces charges of murder and possession of an unlicensed firearm. Mabuti Sihle Mto, who operated under the Border Alliance Taxi Association, was gunned down at Sutherland Street in broad daylight, and we'll be sure to keep you updated on more developments in this case and other cases before the courts here in South Africa. Don't forget our question of the day. This is it. Ratings downgrades. That's what the whole news day is about, Elvis. Is it a political tool? What do you say?
Have it, yeah. But you see, the question that we're posing is very important because we need to look at the background to these rating agencies. Who are their principal members that they answerable to? Yeah. The investors, we are told. But are they really? And that is the question that we'll pose to some of our analysts a little bit later.
Well, we've got them lined up here outside our studio door. We'll bring more on the ratings agencies and the possible downgrade to junk status after a short break. So, don't go away.
One other person has been shot dead and another is in a critical condition in hospital.
The CRL has laid charges against controversial televangelist Paseka Motsoeneng.
More than 1.3 million South Africans have been added in the past 2 registration weekends.
The International Monetary Fund warns that policy uncertainty could dampen economic growth in South Africa.
And all eyes are on the new Bok coach, Alistair Coetzee, his challenge to keep everyone in the country happy.
Welcome back. It's D-Day for South Africa. Observers of Africa's third largest economy are waiting with bated breath ahead of a credit rating announcement by Standard & Poor's this afternoon. Should the country be slapped with a downgrade, it won't be the only one to suffer. Analysts say the consequences could go way beyond South Africa's borders. Now, the chief economist at Econometrics, Dr. Azar Jamin, earlier told us where we stand on the credit rating scale.
On that precipice for this afternoon, but I think there's a very good chance that Standard & Poor's might say that the National Treasury, led by Pravin Gordhan, has really gone out of its way to commit itself to fiscal consolidation and to tackling the problem of state-owned enterprises, and has also had significant discussions with business leaders to try and generate an improved growth path. But we're running up to election time, so a lot of the rhetoric that we hear is really just election rhetoric. Therefore, they may just give us another 6 months and say, we want to see whether what you say you're going to do is actually put into action in the interim.
If we do not get a reprieve and we do get a downgrade, how would it impact on our currency?
Theoretically, it will impact very negatively on the currency. Essentially, what it implies is that certain pension funds who base their decisions on buying South African government bonds on the credit rating will now be no longer allowed to buy South African government bonds. They might in fact be obliged to sell out of South African bonds, and that would depress the rand. That in turn would push inflation up, increasing the likelihood of interest rates going up, and that in turn could be negative for economic growth. And according to one analyst, his calculations say that would be enough to push us into recession. But that is all speculation, because in many respects the dramatic fall in the value of the rand that we saw late last year, and we haven't really recovered from that, can be interpreted as being the markets discounting exactly such a move.
What would this or a possible downgrade mean for our neighbouring countries as well as the SADC region?
Clearly, South Africa is such an important player in the SADC region that if it gets downgraded, and with the implications of a lower currency, higher inflation, higher interest rates, that has a knock-on effect on all those countries around us who depend so closely on South Africa in terms of their trade.
Now, how does credit rating affect a country's trade relations, especially within the SADC region?
It shouldn't really affect the country's trade relations per se. The way in which it affects it is that if South Africa's inflation rate rises, then the neighbouring states are obliged to pay more for the goods that they buy from South Africa, and that tends to push up their inflation rate, and then they in turn are also obliged to raise their interest rates.
If you look at the BRICS nations, you would find that there's a number of them who was already in junk status. Yeah. Is this a phenomenon that we are seeing?
Well, this is precisely why I suggested that maybe the rand wouldn't fall that far, because the ratings downgrade has already been discounted. The fact is that Brazil and Russia are already in junk status, and yet their interest rates relative to American interest rates are no higher than those of South Africa, which leads one to believe that maybe the markets have already discounted a lot of this.
Is there perhaps also a conspiracy theory against the BRICS nations?
Aha! Now, that's one of your lines, Elvis. And, it does make a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because the BRICS were formed really as a counterparty to the G7 and the leading industrialized nations to try and express independence on the part of emerging markets. And one could well say, the advanced economies indirectly are using credit ratings agencies as a means of imposing their continued dominance over international economic relations.
Already we've seen that Egypt now is above us on the continent in terms of our GDP growth. Where does it leave us now if we're going to be downgraded?
I don't think that the fact that Egypt and Nigeria are above us in terms of the GDP stakes really has all that much bearing to the credit rating. The fact is that Nigeria, I think, is on double B and Egypt on single B, way below us in terms of junk status. In other words, international investors still regard South Africa as a far better bet in terms of buying government bonds. They can rely on South Africa's government far more. And even if we were to be downgraded to double B plus, we would still be way ahead of Nigeria and Egypt and still enjoy far more capital inflows into the bond market.
Now, of course, the latest economists are predicting that there's a possibility that South Africa could get a reprieve today from Standard & Poor to fulfill the promises made by Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan on stabilizing the economy. We still ask you the question, that question, of course, ratings downgrade. Are they being used as a political tool? Some live tweets coming in. Let's take a look at some of the live tweets that you've been sending in to us. Now, Stalin Konza says, at SABC Newsroom, ratings agencies target BRICS countries. Parliament in Britain and election in the US are chaotic. But why focus on the ANC and on the Republic of South Africa? That is a fair comment. We're asking the same types of questions. Damien says it's not so much a ratings downgrade that bothers me, but more about how a population reacts when the going gets rough. Yes, Damien, it's all about how you react. Albie says, who rates the ratings agencies? Well, that's what we've been asking Albie today ahead of this. They tell us that the investors do. Angry Black Agent says, y'all ready for a ratings downgrade? Don't be so pessimistic. Sabelo, we will be upgraded today. They say we're going to get a reprieve of a couple of months. Then Isaac says, for the first time since the big three agencies started rating SA in '95, the country faces a real prospect of a downgrade to junk status. He talks about D-Day for South Africa. Shernet says, rating downgrade or no downgrade, we all need to work together to make this country thrive again. Yes, that's what it takes. It takes hard work. It takes coming together. It takes all of us putting our differences aside, not turning our guns on each other, and working to overcome the challenges in the modern world. Let's now take a look what you can see on Newsroom Facebook page on this Friday morning. Now, while we're waiting for them to come up, of course, we asked you the question. We still want you to comment a little bit more on the question of the day. Ratings agency, that's the story of the day. We ask you, have they become a political tool of a Western agenda, if there is such a thing? What do you think of this? That is a legitimate question we asked even some of our experts about this scenario. Let's go to our Facebook page now. The Limpopo chapter of the Progressive Professional Forum held a gathering with young people from different professions as well as businesses and government. NBC, the Northwest government is said to have a super state-owned provincial entity which will drive the economy in the province. Northwest Premier Supra Mohamopelo says most state-owned enterprises in South Africa generally tend to experience problems of underperformance and a loss of revenue. Finally, Johannesburg Emergency Services say deaths as a result of shack fires can be prevented if residents use proper cooking and lighting equipment. All of those and more on our Facebook page. Go there and like the page. Go there and like the page, please. It won't take much, and we'll then be able to interact in live time. And we also put all the latest stories and all the latest details on our Facebook page. After a short break, we talk about what is the best way to save now? Stockfels is maybe the answer in this time of downgrades and tough economic conditions. Maybe that's the way for us to look, is to look at each other and share the love after a short break. Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom now. Stockfels, the traditional community-based savings scheme, is going up market as different income segments embrace the concept that many have held dear for generations. People use Stockfels because they find it great to benefit from a lump sum payout. This is to meet major obligations like pocket-draining housing projects, paying school and university fees. The face of Stockfels has changed over the years. Some Stockfels help members participate in various investment vehicles, including property and now the JSE. Now, we are joined in studio by Rian Appelgrein. He's Senior Manager, Customer Financial Solutions at Standard. Very good morning to you, Rian. Thank you for joining us on Newsroom here today.
Good morning, Evan. Thank you for having me.
We live in a very difficult economic time, and it's often said that South Africa and South Africans have a very weak savings culture. Why do you tell us today that people out there should be looking at Stockfels in a different light now?
Well, as you said, notoriously, we are not good savers in South Africa. We tend to make commitments to ourselves as individuals, say, from next month I will start saving. Next month comes, life happens, and then suddenly we postpone it. And before you know, 6 months has passed or a year has passed. What Stockfels present, and they've been a very, very good teacher for South Africans over many years in terms of how to save. So if you are a group of people with a common purpose and you commit as a group to a specific contribution every month, then that peer pressure that goes with it really creates the environment for you to save and save more effectively, because it's much more difficult for you to disappoint your friends or the people in a group than it is not to be truthful to yourself and get saving.
So you're saying we lie to ourselves a lot in this country?
Well, I won't say, that will be a very unpopular statement. But when it comes to saving, we are, we don't always do what we promise to do.
We're all guilty. We're all guilty of that. But tell us quickly, just give us the mechanics of how a Stockfel works and how does it encourage saving, for that matter?
So, essentially, what will happen is that you will form a group of people will come together. You will form a group, and you will decide, this is our objective. We want to contribute and save together, and this is at the end of the day what we want to achieve through it. It might be for a holiday, it might be to cater for Christmas presents, it might be anything that you as a group decide. You will then choose a chairperson or a treasurer, preferably both, and they will manage the Stockfel from a meeting perspective and from a financial perspective. And then you each make a commitment in terms of what you will contribute, whether it's weekly or monthly, and in that way, and for what period. And at the end of the day, you all agree through the collective agreement what at the end of the day will come out of it. Also, what will you actually go in, is your plan to go and invest in other investment vehicles or whatever is out there. But ultimately, there's a common purpose always attached to it.
Oh, that's fantastic. And how easy is it for a person to withdraw money from a Stockfel other than normal accounts, if one can call it that?
So even you will know, you can just go to the bank and get money out, even if it's in your savings account. In some investments, it might take a little bit longer, but you can get access to it because it's your money.
Yeah.
However, when you save as a group, the group will generally tell you, well, not this month.
Yeah.
All right. You have committed to a specific period, and so I think that's where the discipline comes in.
Yeah.
And unless there's an agreement, it's going to be quite difficult for you to get your money out if you don't follow.
The Stockfel procedure.
The exact procedure, yes.
Tell us quickly, what are the downsides, Rian, that people should be on the lookout for with regards to joining a Stockfel?
So, obviously, we do know that there are people out there that will be after your money. So, when you join a Stockfel, be very, very clear as to what they promise, what you expect to get out of it. There's normally a constitution that will clarify that for you. But I think more importantly is that when people promise you something that is too good to be true, it generally is.
That's wisdom.
Yeah, please be very, very careful. And if you are not sure as to what it means, please consult a certified financial planner, so that they are able to actually provide you with the best possible advice.
And quickly, Rian, how do the banks view Stockfels today? Do we have a better view?
Yes, we are certainly getting a better view, because the more we engage with our customers, the more they tell us what it is that they need and what they want from us. So it allows us to really respond to those needs and the challenges that they experience. But in general, yes, we've got accounts to help them save. We've got the know-how, and we are open for business. It's always a good place to have your money in a trustworthy financial institution.
Rian, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you,
That's very interesting. Difficult economic times, so we need to think out of the box. Stockfels could really help you. Rian Appelgrein is a Senior Manager, Customer Financial Solutions at Standard. Now, before we go to the weather, I can tell you this. France and Germany are bracing themselves for more heavy rain after flash floods killed at least 9 people and flooded several towns, displacing thousands of people there. Yes, even the Louvre, the great Louvre, is under threat of being flooded in the middle of Paris. Let's have a look at some of the tweets that have been coming in with regards to this. There you see the picture. CCTV News says, Musée Louvre to shut and move some artworks upstairs as the flooding in France spread to Paris. Now, you'll know it's right next to the River Seine, and most of the Louvre is underground. The YouTube Newswire reports that the River Seine bulges as deadly flooding continues in the north and central France. That video, of course, available on YouTube. There you see the front, the entrance. That's the main entrance of the Louvre. Heavy flooding in France has the Louvre in Paris closed as a precaution to move precious artwork to higher ground. Yes, the Monets, the Renards, and all of the great historical artworks under threat of being washed out of the great museums in Paris. Not the case here in South Africa. We'd like to have some of the rain. Let's go to Tsetse Manale, who's back after a week away, it seems. Looks like he's got a little bit of sun.
Hello there, welcome from the weather desk. Here we are seeing a bit of rain towards the southwestern parts of Africa, particularly for the Western Cape and over the Eastern Cape provinces. Otherwise, clear and dry conditions for much of the interior going all the way towards the northern regions of Southern Africa. Temperatures are expected to drop. A cool day for South Africa. If you're going to be in Sutherland, do expect a maximum of only 13 degrees today. So cooler weather coming up, a bit of rain for PE going up towards Pietermaritzburg, partly cloudy skies for that eastern side, a bit of sunny conditions for much of the northern as well as over the far western interior. Walvis Bay reaching a maximum of 27 degrees, and also do expect a bit of those rainy conditions towards a place such as Antananarivo over Madagascar. Lusaka at a maximum of 23, rainy weather for Kampala, Kigali, as well as over the far west into Libreville. Yaoundé, partly cloudy skies are expected along those parts with possibilities of rain. And you'll see this into Saturday as well. Showers coming up towards Juba, Addis Ababa, as well as over Bangui in the Central African Republic. Kampala 23 is your maximum temperatures. Kigali 24. Kinshasa is at 33. And 30 for all those that are going to be in Luanda. Addis Ababa reaching a maximum of 26. Sana'a do expect a bit of rain, but again, dry weather for Saudi Arabia, Egypt, as well as all the way towards Algeria. And definitely into Chad, do expect possibilities of really hot conditions between today and tomorrow. So there are your temperatures. Hot weather for Luxor, as well as over Al Jouf. Not forgetting El Fasher. Those are into the upper 40s. Rainy weather for Sana'a and possibly into Djibouti as well. Port Sudan at the maximum of 38 degrees, and do expect again just some light showers along the coastal parts from Nigeria going all the way up towards Conakry. Otherwise, partly cloudy skies to dominate into your weekend as well. Temperature-wise, 43 for Naomi, Bamako 41. Really hot weather expected along those parts. That's why I leave it for the weather for now. Stay tuned. There'll be more later.
In Africa, technology has created many new ways of doing things.
ICT is an increasingly important part of everybody's life.
It's being used in education, for social media, and now for farming too.
The best thing about internet for a farmer is that you get to share information.
On Network, we give you all the important African technology and social media news. That's Network with me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time, only on SABC News.
Children's rights and health are a priority in the journey of good health.
All children should have access to adequate health care, not only curative but preventative as well.
How to identify ADHD on children.
ADHD is a childhood disorder which manifests with the symptoms of hyperactivity, impulsivity, and or inattention.
Is breastfeeding still a vital nutrition to babies even today?
Breastfeeding for the first 6 months of life is absolutely crucial.
Catch Health Talk with Dr. Sello Mutawun every Saturday from 9 till 10 a.m.
News Today keeps you informed with news locally and around the world.
When Judge John Hlophe challenged the Supreme Court of Appeal when it sent the matter back and said that there must be an inquiry set up.
We unpack business news.
There's an increase in general inflation in the country.
We give you up-to-date news of the day.
The drugs were seized at several locations in Sydney, including a shipping container sent from Hong Kong. Police say it's the largest haul of illicit drugs in 2 years.
We round up sports news.
Kotata, tell me about the legacy that you would like to build and be remembered for.
Trying to get my foundation running, which is going to focus on, all the sport, doesn't matter disability or able body. So, I'm passionate about sports.
Stay informed every Monday to Friday from 3 to 5:30 p.m. CAT. SABC News.
What's wrong with Triple M? What is illegal here? Who is being defrauded here, Trevor?
It is about the best interest of the citizens of this country.
But the citizens are the ones who are playing, who are members or participants in this. If you put in 50,000 rand, after 12 months you get 1.2 million rands. Who wouldn't go for this?
Watch Question Time with me, Mpho Tsedu, Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News Channel.
Friday, the 3rd of June 2016. This is Newsroom on SABC News, Channel 404. If you've just joined us, Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome. We are broadcasting live from Auckland Park here in Johannesburg to the rest of the African continent. I'm Elvis Presley.
And I'm Renee Vest, and we'll be with you until 12 o'clock. We're also streaming live on our YouTube channel. Now today we focus on ratings agency Standard & Poor's, who will announce its review of South Africa's credit rating today amid fears of looming downgrade. Both Standard & Poor's and Fitch have the country's credit rating at one notch above junk status.
So the question that we pose to you today is, ratings agencies and threats of downgrades, are they being used as a political tool? It's on your screen right now. You can let me know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on our Facebook page. But first, let's take a look at your news headlines. South Africa will know its fate on whether it has avoided junk status later today. The country is now ready for the 2016 municipal elections with a 26.3 million eligible voters in the country. And suspended National Police Commissioner Ria Piecha to launch her final bid to hold on to a job at the Clausen Board of Inquiry. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news with Renee, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Good morning. Good morning to the both of you. It's very good to be here, and it's very good to be chatting to you as well about what's coming up in the sports today.
Van Niekerk, those flailing arms of Van Niekerk, keep him clear by a metre, comes towards the line, watch the clock, it's a strong run, 44-2-0.
South African athletes headlining in Rome as Wade van Niekerk, men's 400-meter world champion, lays down a marker at the Rome Diamond League meet.
Por eso sí que no sabía.
And global soccer star Lionel Messi denies any knowledge of tax fraud, claiming he dedicated himself only to playing the sport.
And that's it.
And world number ones Serena Williams and Novak Djokovic are through to the semi-finals of the French Open. That is where we're going to leave it for now. We'll also be chatting to Polele Sotelelo and Jody Hendricks about what's coming up this weekend, a big preview of the national teams. For now, back to the main desk of news.
Oh, thank you very much, Kendall. Now, South Africa will know later today whether we have managed to avoid junk status. Global rating agency Standard & Poor will announce their decision this evening. S&P's currently rank this country just one notch above sub-investment grade, or so-called junk status.
They're not quite as well disposed towards us as Moody's have been. So, you know, they'll cast a very critical eye. They've got a very long established presence in South Africa. They've done their homework, and I'm sure that when they come out, they will present what they think is a fair appraisal of the situation. And as I say, it's after hours. We have taken the view that we'll probably avoid downgrade as well. We agree with the finance minister. And what they'll maybe say is, along the lines of Moody's, let's give you 6 months. Yeah. Let's see all of these good intentions that you've been talking about translated into something very, very tangible.
The Independent Electoral Commission has certified the voters' roll for the 2016 municipal elections with a 26.3 million eligible voters. The number has increased by 2.6 million from the 2011 municipal elections. Registration for parties and independent candidates contesting the August 3rd elections closed yesterday. The IEC hailed its online registration system for candidates as a success despite some glitches.
It's a first for the IEC and for the continent. Online registration for candidates contesting the elections. However, it wasn't a smooth run.
As you'd expect, any system new will have glitches, but not anything fundamental so as to imperil the ability of parties to make the submissions they should.
However, Black First, Land First didn't get that opportunity to register and now want the courts to intervene.
We believe that it's unfair. We believe it goes against the fundamental rights to participate.
You've got to observe 14 days before the application can be considered. That 14 days is necessary to allow for those who may have an objection against the registration of the party.
For now, the IEC has to consolidate all the submissions, and for the first time in the history of municipal elections, will the ANC have competition in every single ward from both the DA and the EFF.
It's a key indicator. That's a very important thing, because South Africans now go into elections with a choice between two, really, between corruption and a non-corrupt government.
We went through a process, a very intensive and thorough process, which was necessary, of course, that made us to get candidates that we can take back to the committee.
While smaller parties are not contesting every ward and municipality.
All the metros, we are going to go for it, and we are definitely sure that this time we are well prepared.
We cannot. It is a municipal election. It's very difficult to get a candidate everywhere and to contest everywhere.
Meanwhile, it was a nail-biting moment for the ANC as it tried to submit just before the 5 p.m. deadline. This while aggrieved members protested outside the party's headquarters.
Others are here because they don't accept the outcome of an appeal process. Okay? Because some appealed and they told, listen, this is not a basis for appeal.
The IEC is adamant those who missed the deadline will not make it onto the ballot papers. Aldrin St-Pierre, SABC News, Johannesburg.
A confident Gauteng ANC says it will fill the 94,000 capacity FNB Stadium in Soweto tomorrow. This despite dissent among the ranks, with some members and supporters threatening to put a damper on the event. The party will be launching its provincial manifesto.
It's going to be a mammoth task, filling the close to 95,000 seats in the country's premier stadium. But the ANC Gauteng leadership believes it's done enough to rally the troops. It's been on the ground these past few weeks to drum up support for its manifesto launch.
They are already working hard, these volunteers, activists, and supporters, for a decisive victory for the ANC on the 3rd of August. The members and supporters of the ANC in Gauteng province are highly energized, very motivated, and ready for the rally. We expect to pack the stadium to full capacity.
But the councillor candidate lists are a hot potato.
Part of that is to communicate with all branches where their preferred candidate was not endorsed at all those levels. And I must say that those instances are very few.
That unhappiness played out on the doorsteps of the ANC headquarters.
While these supporters say they're willing to take it a step further and may boycott the launch of the Gauteng Manifesto on Saturday if their concerns are not addressed.
We don't want the councillor in our ward, and we're not going to the FNB. We want our demands met.
They chose a councillor for us, which we don't want.
Has 6.2 million registered voters, the highest in the country. The ANC has appealed for political tolerance in the run-up to the elections on the 3rd of August. Crisalda Lewis, SABC News.
The legal team of suspended National Police Commissioner Ria Pierre is expected to wrap up its final arguments at the Class and Board of Inquiry in Pretoria this morning. Evidence leaders have accused Pierre of violating the country's constitution and breaching her oath of office. They believe she should be held responsible for the deaths of 34 miners who were shot by police in August 2012 during a strike at Lonmin Platinum Mine in Marikana. The evidence leaders are calling for her removal as the police boss. Pierre's team has, for its part, stressed that it's important to distinguish whether events at Marikana were under her control or that of Northwest Provincial Commissioner General Zukiswa Mbombo, who has since retired. Now, Johannesburg Emergency Services say deaths as a result of shack fires can be prevented if residents use proper cooking and lighting equipment. Last winter, emergency personnel responded to 600 fires in Johannesburg, which left over 30 people dead. The emergency service say they've now procured 1,000 safety kits to be distributed to informal settlements around the city. They consist of a paraffin stove that extinguishes itself once tipped over, a smoke detector and a rechargeable solar lantern. Johannesburg Emergency Services Robert Maloludzi says since the introduction of the kits, they've seen a 42% reduction in shack fire-related facilities. Well, that's all the news we have for now, but it's over to Elvis.
But staying with fires, South Africa has deployed its biggest ever firefighting team to Alberta in Canada earlier this week. The more than 300 men and women are now on the front line fighting a variety of fires in the Canadian wilderness. It's a story that's been splashed all over the international news as the team, in typical South African fashion, endeared themselves to the international community. I'm joined now in studio by the man who got this initiative underway, the CEO of Working on Fire, Trevor Abrams. Mr. Abrams, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning.
Now, you must be a very proud man this morning having your team over there in Canada.
Well, you know, the whole family of the Working on Fire is quite chuffed at the moment. This is not the first time we've been to Canada. We did something last year. And this is certainly the largest peacetime mobilization of assistance. And of course, very interestingly, from Africa to the north.
Is this the first for a team from Africa to actually assist the West?
No, actually we did a smaller team in July last year when they had also emergency situation with the fires there. So at that stage, 50 of our firefighters went over for a month.
Now, when you deployed this team, did you have any idea that it would grab the headlines and the media's attentions in such a big way, so to speak?
We had some idea it's a newsworthy item, but not on the scale that we've seen the outpouring, you know, and interest, of course. I mean, from CNN, BBC, of course, obviously in the Canadian media, and from prime ministers getting involved. The Prime Minister of Canada tweeting a welcome to them. The former Prime Minister of Canada, Brian Mulroney, who was always known for his support for the anti-apartheid struggle, he was a conservative Prime Minister.
Yes.
And he stood up against Reagan and Thatcher at that time, particularly when they had the convention in Vancouver, the Commonwealth Convention. And Madiba actually acknowledged that when he came out of jail, the support that he got from Canada. And he's writing in the press about this unintended consequence of their foreign policy.
Now, what does this kind of deployment mean for Working on Fire as a whole, but also for our country, South Africa?
I think the impact for our firefighters is absolutely tremendous. I mean, you know, many of them, our Working on firefighters come from our rural, impoverished communities. Most of them are unemployed when they've come into the program. And many of them have never been on a plane even, let alone, you know, abroad. So you can imagine the amazing story when they come back to their homes to tell about having been over in Canada. But, you know, the interesting part of it is that, you know, in our previous deployment, we were actually rated very, very high. These firefighters are scored and measured every day.
Yes.
And we came up tops in terms of international teams being deployed in Canada last year. So they're actually recognized for their skills, for their fitness, and for their hard working. So, you know, they get recognized there broadly in the media. I mean, you know, when they were welcomed, when they landed in Alberta, we have all numbers of emails and messages of support from Canadians. Our High Commissioner in Ottawa is getting letters on a daily basis from Canadians thanking them for our support. You know, so it's a major recognition, it's a major experience and exposure, which I think they would never have dreamt of before.
What is sort of feedback that you get from the boys and girls on the ground?
Well, they are extremely happy, excited. I mean, I saw them through to the plane as they left. You could see the excitement. It was, in fact, they came to the airport at 2 a.m. They eventually departed closer to 8 a.m. But you could see the excitement on board. We have pictures of them We'd ask them how they're feeling, and just see the kind of joy in their eyes. It was amazing.
Now, it's interesting to note that our team is nearly twice the size of the USA team that was sent by the United States. Why is that, you think?
Well, when the Canadians approached us, they gave us a sense that, look, we're getting into trouble, we might need some support. And then we did some estimates of what scale they would need. And we obviously put them through a retraining to familiarize them with Canadian equipment and methodology in terms of what they're doing over there. So that figure was already worked on from the Canadian side. The Americans, of course, as much as they're providing 200 at the moment, 199, they also confronted with their own fires. In fact, the US typically also draws on the Mexican firefighters to assist them. So I think it's really a question of where people can afford. We're in a relatively favorable situation in that we've got 5,000 young people working on fire.
Are they all volunteers?
No, they're not volunteers. They're part of a government's expanded working program, through the Department of Environment Affairs. And so they get a small stipend, they get the training, and this is seen as part of building their preparedness for pursuing other careers in our society.
And that is what we need so desperately in this country, where people at least can gain some skills. Yes. Now, tell us about the deployment, how it came about, and all the logistics. It must have been horrendous to put this all together in such a short space of time.
Well, it is certainly a major logistical task. It's not something that we're unfamiliar with, because even when we have fires that are large here, as we had in Cape Town last year in March, and we actually had about 15 teams come from as far as Limpopo to assist with the fires. Because, felt firefighting is very tiring. So it's not just a matter of how many people you have, but it's the relief you give. And that's what we're doing in Canada now. We're providing relief to exhausted Canadian firefighters so they can be circulated out. So the logistics entailed everything, getting them prepared, their passports and all the nitty-gritty of that. Of course, the Canadians helped a lot in terms of providing a chartered plane, huge Boeing 777. So there was just one movement out of South Africa via Barbados to Edmonton.
Now, these Canadian fires often last for months. How long will your deployment be?
The initial cycle, as we've agreed with the Canadians, is for 1 month. Obviously, the situation will be assessed at that point in time. As I've indicated, when a country brings in additional forces, they're essentially there to relieve their own capacity. So it really depends on how the fire season. This year, I must say, the fire season, by our Canadian colleagues would tell us, is much earlier than anticipated. Last year, it happened in July. Here in May already, we deployed. So you can get a sense of how early it is in terms of their normal fire season.
Mr. Abrams, so we're going to keep you to it. We need some pictures, we need some visuals, we need to know how the boys and girls are doing on the ground.
We'll certainly keep you updated. They've been deployed into the field, and obviously it's fairly remote areas, but we'll certainly try and keep you posted.
By the way, it's a large contingent of women in the group as well.
Yes, in fact, this is the other impact that we have. We've got about 21% in this contingent, women. In our whole program is 30%. And the Canadians are writing about it because they're saying, look at their own firefighting. In Montreal, we've got 1% women. Toronto, 2%. Vancouver, 3%. They're also referring to blacks. In the US, it's about 10%. So, it's actually raising a lot of questions there also in terms of how they go about recruiting.
Mr. Abrams, thank you so much for your team and joining us here.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Now, that was the CEO of Working on Fire, Trevor Abrams. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back after that.
Other person has been shot dead and another is in a critical condition in hospital.
The CRL has laid charges against controversial televangelist Paseka Mutsoneng.
More than 1.3 million South Africans have been added in the past two registration weekends.
The International Monetary Fund warns that policy uncertainty could dampen economic growth in South Africa.
And all eyes are on the new Bok coach, Alistair Coetzee. He's challenged to keep everyone in the country happy.
Why are electoral systems important in a democracy?
We think of democracy as voting people into office,
The other side of the coin is that we would be more empowered and more accountable in politics if we could do the opposite, is vote them out when they don't deliver.
Now, we're foreseeing innovation and technology trends emerging across the African continent, from drones to new equipment in agriculture and housing, technology that connects people and even in transport. But there is one industry that the light is now being shining onto, the sports industry. We are joined by author of Connect with the Continent, that's the African continent, Terry Behan. Terry, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning.
Now, we're going to talk about sports. This is quite a change for today's discussion. Tell me more about this. Why sport?
Normally we talk about real serious stuff like technology and we talk about drones, but in reality, innovation is very evident in the sporting world as well. So, Elvis, when you think about whiskey, where's the best whiskey come
Scotland.
from? It comes from Scotland. When you think about suits, where do the best suits come from?
Italians.
And if you think about technology, where does the best technology come from?
America, Silicon Valley.
Exactly. Where are the best runners in the world from?
Kenya.
Indeed. But they've never, ever made a running shoe.
Yes.
Until now.
So tell me more about that.
So there's this amazing project that's just come up. It's launched on Kickstarter, which is a fundraising platform. And it's called the Enda I-10. It is a running shoe designed by the best runners in the world, in a country where the best runners live and train, and in fact where a lot of the world's top middle distance and long distance athletes go to train. And they've developed this running shoe with Kenyan conditions in mind to share with the running community and the rest of the world. But when we talk about running, we talk about long distance running. So it's specifically for long distance runners? Or? Well, I mean, long distance running for you and me is anything over 100 meters. Exactly. So it's anything where you're not wearing a spiked shoe. So really it's for everybody. It's for anybody who might be running 2 kilometers or 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers, all the way up to the kind of longer distances. So it's really for the running community, which is quite a large one.
Now, a running shoe in Kenya seems like an obvious thing designed by the best runners in the world. But what's taken them so long to develop such a shoe?
Well, I think Kenya, like South Africa, has got some challenges in terms of its manufacturing capability and capacity. You can develop a good product pretty quickly. It takes time to develop a great product. And they have invested time and energy in this. And what they've done is they've partnered up with a global design firm. They've worked with athletes. They have refined the product to the point where it looks like a world-class product that's going to get into the market later on this year.
And it doesn't look like a very ugly shoe. I mean, look at that shoe there that we see there. It's beautiful. I mean, and it's got lovely colors as well. It's got the Kenyan colors there.
It's got the Kenyan colors. It's got some really unique design features. It's got the Kenyan colors. It has, the motif of the logo looks like a spear, which is a very strong element in Kenyan society. They have the word Harambe on the underside of the shoe. So Harambe refers to sort of the Kenyan version of Ubuntu, sort of pulling together. And then they also have the Rift Valley kind of carved into the back of the shoe where all the top kind of athletes come from. So it's quite a well-considered, well-thought-out design, not just from a look and feel. It's highly fashionable. So I foresee people buying this shoe and wearing it just because they want to celebrate innovation and technology and running from Kenya, but also from what I've understood, it's an incredibly good technical product that you're going to see a lot of runners wanting to buy in order to increase their speed.
What about cost?
At the moment, what they're doing is they're launching it on Kickstarter. You can go and you can be one of the first people to buy a set of shoes. So currently the shoes are kind of going up around probably going to retail between the sort of $70 to $100 mark, which is about right for this kind of pair of shoes. Right now you can go on to Kickstarter, you can get a pair of shoes with your number embossed on it if you're the first 250 people to do it. But I think they do that to raise capital, and they were looking to raise about $75,000 as a basic investment so they can get the first batch into production. They've exceeded that, so I think they've passed that hurdle. But I think what's more important is what they're looking at doing is creating a high-tech, high-spec running shoe, ultimately made in Kenya by the best runners in the world for the global running community.
Sounds absolutely fantastic. What will that do for the economy of Kenya?
I think it's you know, at the moment they're going to have to sort of what we call co-source. They're going to have to source some of the production in China, some of the production somewhere else. They'll bring all those parts together. They'll bring it into the local market and they'll manufacture it there. So I think if that product takes off and does well, you'll find that it's going to have a nice positive impact on the manufacturing sector in Kenya, because this is something new. You know, manufacturing high-tech sneakers in that market, it will be quite cool.
Terry, as usual, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio. Oh, that was Terry Behan now. A shoe from Kenya, right here on the African continent. Unbelievable. You'll be running very fast, I can guarantee you that. You've seen the Kenyan runners, right? Well, that's where we got to leave it for now. Kendall will be up next with your sports news. You have to stay tuned.
Thank you very much, Elvis, and a hearty good morning to all of you. It's good to be here to be talking sports to you on Newsroom. Now, South Africa's medal prospects at this year's Olympic Games still looking strong as Caster Semenya, Wade van Niekerk and Sinet Viljoen put in winning performances at the Rome Diamond League meet last night. Akani Simbini came 6th in the 100-meter sprint, which was won by Justin Gatlin in a time of 9.93 seconds.
It's going to be close, but I fear it's just starting to slip away.
The real star of the night, though, was Ethiopian long-distance sensation Almaz Ayana, who narrowly missed breaking compatriot Tirunesh Dibaba's 5,000-meter record by 1.44 seconds. She stopped the clock at 14 minutes 12.59 seconds. It was an IAAF Diamond League record. It was a meeting record at the Italian one-day showpiece, and it was the fastest time run this year. It was also the second fastest time ever run.
And Neon Saab it is with Semenya on the crown of the bend, cutting loose, beginning to move away.
Caster Semenya looks an unstoppable force as she moves closer and closer to the Rio 2016 Olympic Games. The South African equaled her 2016 world-leading time of 1 minute 56.64 seconds set in Rabat, Morocco, in registering her third win in as many IAAF Diamond League outings.
Comfortably indeed, 1:56.65, a 59.9 second lap after the opener, where the pacemaker went through in 56.7.
Wade van Niekerk, the IAAF World Championship Beijing 2015 400-meter winner and the fastest man in the world last year over one lap of the track, reminded the world of his true gold medal credentials. Leading from 200 meters on, he crossed the line in just 44.19 seconds, ominously close to his sub-44 seconder last year that has made him the fourth fastest man of all time in the distance.
Comes towards the line, watch the clock, it's a strong run, 44.20.
Javelin star Sinet Viljoen threw 61.95 meters to record a second Diamond League victory of the season to round off a perfect trio of performances by South African athletes and a chilly Rome.
That's surely well beyond 60 meters, that might take the lead. 61.95 and she takes the lead.
All right, now that's very interesting results out in Rome last night. And besides that, this weekend looks like a very big one for our national teams. And we've got some very interesting action out in the Caribbean as well as out in West Africa. Now, with me are two of South Africa, SABC's and South Africa's finest journalists and commentators, Jody Hendricks and Eskolele Sochelela. Gentlemen, good morning. Welcome back to Newsroom.
Kendall, thank you. Jeez, I haven't seen you in a while, and I've just heard now. Congratulations on the newborn baby.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. That's very, very good of you. My wife is definitely going to be baking you guys a cake. What do you make, before we get into the nub of the matter, what do you make of the performances out in Rome last night? I mean, it's really good performances in an Olympic year that all three of our normal medal prospects are actually putting in those winning performances.
Yeah, Kendall, for me, I think peaking at the right time is important. If they had to run these times or throw the javelin that far a year ago, you know, we could have said, are they peaking at the right time? For me, 3 first places, Caster, Wade van Niekerk and Sinet Viljoen. I think it's good for South Africa and also good for the South African team going to the Olympics.
No, very good. No, I definitely agree with you, and that's why we headlined that particular story. The reason why we're here today is we've got 2 of our national teams in action this weekend. We've got the Springboks in action next weekend in that incoming test against Ireland. But first up, the Tri-Series out in the Caribbean, Six. Your thoughts about the Proteas playing in the Tri-Series against Australia and the West Indies?
They did it last year against, well, they were hosted by Zimbabwe, and we saw the competitiveness of Zimbabwe. I still say I would like to see more of the lower teams playing these triangular series like Afghanistan coming up against Bangladesh on a more regular basis. However, it's an opportunity for Russell Domingo to get some sort of dignity back into the South African cricket. side because the past year or season wasn't up to standard. He knows, and we all know, that his contract ends at the end of 2016-2017 season. So he would also want to start on a high. And the Proteas ODI team is so unique in that they've got a lot of options when it comes to the bowling department, unlike when they wear the white clothes, where we know it's a set team of Dale Steyn, Kagiso Rabada, More Moko, and Vernon Philander. But with the white ball, there's a lot of options that they have in Fahan Bardeen, Carl Abbott, David Visa, Chris Morris. So that will be interesting for me, bearing in mind the conditions of the subcontinent and some of the players like Wayne Parnell, who have played in the Caribbean Premier League, but also the batting. You know, we know South Africa, of the 7 ODIs that have played with the West Indies, they've won 5 of them, and we know AB de Villiers, you know, comes off very well when he comes up against the
Well, we're certainly hoping that his the performances that he put in for the Royal Challengers Bangalore, he finally brings them to bear on the Proteas result.
Yeah, I think he makes a very interesting point when it comes to AB de Villiers. I think he has maybe carried the South African team of late. Against the West Indies, he averages, I think, 138. 3 centuries in 6 games. So we need the other guys, the Quinton de Koks and other guys, to perform as well. Coming back to the Tri-Series, though, Kendall, it's going to be very difficult. West Indian cricket, they are on a high after winning the T20 World Cup. Australia, they're playing good cricket again. So I don't think it's going to be an easy series for South Africa. And starting tonight against the host, you know, it's going to be challenging.
There's been quite a lot about Parnell and how he's coming to his own. I mean, Russell Domingo has been talking about how he's finally got his confidence back. How many times does this guy get his confidence back before he actually starts performing on a consistent basis?
The relationship between Russell Domingo and Wayne Parnell is pretty close, very close. But Russell Domingo sees something very unique in the young man. Oh, not so young anymore. But he's grown. We saw him taking some sort of responsibility in the Cape Cobras last year, being promoted up the order and coming off with runs in the Ram Slam and Momentum One Day Cup, and also picking up wickets. He knows now that he's under a bit of pressure because there's 2 all-rounders in that setup in Chris Morris and David Visser. And he was always earmarked to be the all-rounder who will feature in all of the formats for South Africa, and he hasn't just delivered. And the problem with Wayne Parnell for the longer part of his career up until now is that he's spent more time with the Proteas, travelling with them, and not playing enough domestic cricket, and particularly first-class cricket.
Yeah, the issue I have with Wayne Parnell is we all know that he's got the talent. He's proven it at franchise and provincial level.
Even at school level, he was proven.
The issue I have is consistency. It's one thing playing one good game, taking 5 wickets, and then going 5-6 games, you know, not performing, getting it all over the place. So that the issue that I have with Wayne Parnell. And I think if you want to take an example of a bowler who has actually made good was Kagiso Rabada. He got a few opportunities and he's performed ever since. And I think Wayne Parnell can learn something from the kid.
You see, the issue I have there is the patience also that you afford the player, that you make him understand of his role in the team. And you give him time, because he's not always going to pick up 3 wickets or 4 wickets. He's not always going to score you 50 or a quick 30 or 15 balls. And if he can keep the economy rate, which has always been his problem, Wayne Parnell, because he will become that 4th, 5th bowler option where he needs to drop the run rate, and he hasn't done that before. And I believe right now he's up there amongst the all-rounders that we have.
Gentlemen, time is running away with us. Let's not pick on Wayne Parnell. Let's hope all the best for him. We do agree that he's got potential. He just needs to be consistent about it. And we need to be patient. I get that. Very big in the news has been the disbanding of the 4-person panel that was put together by Cricket South Africa to look at our national team's performances. Now, they've had a series of meetings. They've hardly met their mandate, and they're gone.
Kendall, very interesting, and it makes me think personally, how seriously does Cricket South Africa take the team's performances? They said, you know, the way the team's performed, not only in tests but also in T20 and one-day cricket the past year, has been worrying. The year was an opportunity to address some of the issues.
But you can't say it's Cricket South Africa. It's the panellists themselves who failed to, according to one of the panellists, Ras Tucker, who went onto Twitter, according to sources, said they couldn't meet eye to eye on timeframes, scope and so on and so forth, and they disbanded themselves as opposed to Cricket South Africa.
But Cricket South Africa, they're responsible for the national team, so they need to say, are we happy with the performances? If we can't assemble a panel who can meet on a regular basis, what are we going to do to address the problem? Are we just going to leave it and carry on like we have and be comfortable with mediocre results? That's what I'm saying. So even if the panel can't meet on a regular basis, they've still, as Cricket South Africa, it's their responsibility the way the national team performs, and they've got to put measures in place to address how the team performs.
Nobody's talking about Russell Domingo and his performances over the last 18 months either, because that was one of their mandates.
Russell Domingo has been under a lot of pressure the last couple of, I think 2 years, because we lost our #1 ranking in Test cricket. We're struggling in T20 and one-day cricket. So
we're struggling in Tests.
We lost back. Yeah, we lost our #1 ranking.
Yeah.
So for me, Russell Domingo is under pressure. Who's the right man to take over, though? That's the question.
That's never the right question to ask, though, because that same question is being asked, was asked about Hanneke Meyer. We've got Alistair Coetzee, who is now in charge of the Springboks, but the same question is being asked about who's the right man to take over from Shakes Mashaba. The Bafana coach who just recently admitted that, if I could say, he was derelict of his duties and didn't prepare properly, and that's why Bafana and the quandary they're in right now in AFCON 2017 qualifiers.
Yeah, Kendall, permutations is the word that comes to mind. A lot of things need to happen. A lot of teams are going to lose. Bafana is going to need to win by a certain amount of goals for us to qualify for AFCON 27. The reality is the team didn't do well when they needed to. They didn't win games. They drew games and lost games that they needed to win in order to qualify for this tournament. We did it 2 years ago. We qualified. We didn't make it out of the group stages. But Shakes Mashaba, he's been at the helm now. I think it's been, when did Gordon leave? 2012, 2013. He's been at the helm now for 3-4 years. Has he produced? I don't think so. There's a lot of young coaches, and again, there's always this debate about a foreign coach. Does he understand South African cricket? What can they bring to the national team? I think if the team doesn't qualify for AFCON 2017 after this weekend's games, we're going to have to start looking at a national coach or a new national coach.
You got thoughts?
Yeah, just to add on to what Jody has just said, that he doesn't know who the next coach who should proceed after Russell Domingo. There's plenty. I speak of plenty, I speak of two guys. There's Rob Walters and Jeffrey Toyana, not so far, just down the road from us, who has produced the players, who has produced a team that is well transformed. And if you look at that, and then you look at the reasonings behind, apart from his qualifications and his experience, Alistair Coetzee being appointed as a new Bok coach, that he's been able to transform the Stormers and built a winning team. That's what Jeffrey Toyana has done for the past 3 seasons that he's been in charge, and he's brought trophies that have been missing for over 10 years. And so I don't think we should look far when it comes to the next Proteas coach, because we've got Jeffrey Toyana and Rob Walters, who's also knocking on the door.
You know what, the very next time I want to talk about national coaches, I'm definitely bringing the both of you here, because I get both sides of the coin and I also get some ideas. And gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for coming through. We do hope that the Bafana, they win against Gambia, and that the Proteas beat the West Indies later on tonight. And the Springboks against Ireland, of course, we hope the best for them. So thank you so much for coming through, gentlemen.
I just hope they pick the right team next weekend.
Yeah, no, we'll chat about that next week. I'll be bringing you back, definitely. There you have it. Two of our finest, Jody Hendricks and Xolile Sotshelelwa, talking to us about our national coaches and teams. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we've got more news, more analysis. You're watching Newsroom.
Another person has been shot dead and another is in a critical condition in hospital.
The CRL has laid charges against controversial televangelist Paseka Motsoeneng.
More than 1.3 million South Africans have been added in the past 2 registration weekends.
The International Monetary Fund warns that policy uncertainty could dampen economic growth in South Africa.
And all eyes are on the new Bok coach, Alistair Coetzee. He's challenged to keep everyone in the country happy.
It's a cliche, but today, of course, is the big D-Day for hearing what the major decision from the credit rating agency Standard & Poor will be on South Africa's investment rating. Will South Africa be downgraded to junk status or not? Well, either way, there will be significant implications for the South African economy. But in the meantime, there were also further important economic statistics released this week. The data revolved around the latest trade figures for March, the rate of the private sector credit being extended to the private sector in April, and of course, new vehicle sales figures for May. The trade data tends to be volatile but have shown a consistent trade surplus in the last few months. Private sector credit extension has slowed markedly and motor vehicle sales again fell sharply. What does it all mean? To discuss this and other factors relating to the economy, we are joined by economist Professor Raymond Parsons from the Northwest University School of Business here in studio, and governance. Don't forget the governance part. A very good morning to you, sir. Welcome.
Good morning, Elvis.
Now, we're standing on the precipice of that downgrade, but we'll get to that particular part. I want for us to start with the trade surplus. What are the imports and export figures looking like for us?
Well, Elvis, this is an important number for us because it helps to define whether we can pay our way in the world, the balance between imports and exports. Mm-hmm. And although, as you say, it's a volatile number, the fact remains that there is some improvement. We seem to be doing a little better on exports because of the rand being weak. That's the upside of a weak rand. Of course, the downside is that you get more inflation, which catches up with you eventually. And of course, our imports have fallen because of the slowing down in our economy. So it's looking a little better, and possibly for the year as a whole, our deficit between imports and exports will be lower than it's been in some of the earlier years.
And what about the lower levels of credit extension to the private sector? And of course, vehicle sales slumped. Do these figures still echo a sluggish trend in our economy?
Yes, those are two important numbers which just confirm the fact that we are in a weak economy at the moment. And there are other numbers that, of course, also indicate that. On the credit extension, it was less than was forecast by quite a lot of economists. Also suggests that the demand for credit is simply not there. People are being stressed out financially, don't want to take on more debt. And so it also suggests that this inflation we talk about so often is in fact not a demand pull inflation. It's not being pushed by our economy or by excess demand, as we say, but is being pushed up by certain costs like the Eskom costs and the low rand and so forth. So that's an important, significant factor. And then, of course, the other is that the vehicle sales have taken a knock, and that's a pretty important barometer, which once again merely confirms, it's not new, it's just confirming for those who are not yet convinced that we are not in a good place as far as economic activity is concerned at the moment.
Now, the big day, D-Day today, Standard & Poor on the precipice of either giving us a downgrade or perhaps letting us go. First and foremost, I want to go back and recap for us the main concerns about South Africa's economy and that have been raised by Standard & Poor in terms of where we stand and where we should be.
Well, I think all the credit rating agencies, the three important ones, of course, that the actual boxes they tick are firstly the state of our budget, the state of our public finances, how we're financing the budget, the fact that our public debt is too high, and that raises certain questions and certain doubts about our fiscal solidarity. That's being addressed by the budget. We'll come back to that. Secondly, of course, they're worried about our growth prospects. They say, look, all these issues that we are concerned about, a lot of them will be resolved if you can get this economy moving faster than it is at the moment. Then they also look at, of course, labour stability, the state of the labour market. Then finally, a policy certainty, and what has been called by Standard & Poor the political noise that goes around all that. So those are the main boxes that they will tick, that they have ticked, and will, of course, also tick this afternoon.
Now, in the event of a downgrade, would it really be such a doomsday scenario, as everybody is saying, or has it happened to other countries where they have actually survived?
Well, this afternoon we'll know whether Standard & Poor see that the glass is half full or half empty, and they will indicate very clearly where they stand. Of course, there are a number of other countries that have been downgraded or are in the junk status. But I would say that although we're doing better than quite a few of them, it's not a club we want to join. It's a club that one should rather not be in. So quite clearly, from the point of view of seeking to avert a downgrade, we have to make, and have been making, every effort to see whether the decision this afternoon will not be quite as bad as some people are expecting.
Several analysts, including yourself, have indicated that there's a 50-50 chance of that particular downgrade of a decision going either way today. But doesn't it all eventually come down to policymakers and the country, how we respond to these decisions when decisions are taken in the country?
Well, I think that's important both before the decision of Standard & Poor and afterwards, whatever that decision is this afternoon. And the important point here is that if you had spoken to a lot of people a few months ago, they'd have said, look, a downgrade is probably on the cards. But we've made efforts. We've been proactive through the National Treasury with business and labour, have gone out of their way to engage with foreign investors, to engage with the credit rating agencies, to say, look, we've got work in progress here. We are trying to turn the situation around. Give us time. So the important point today will be whether we are, A, given more time, because remember that the credit rating agencies will be back in December, and secondly, how wisely we use that time. In other words, that we implement what we've said we will do.
Now, conspiracy theorists are suggesting that the ratings agencies are using downgrades as a political tool. What's your thoughts?
Well, I think my response would be based on three arguments. The first is, let's not fall into the syndrome, let's shoot the messenger. I think we've got to be careful of that. Because after all, what the rating agencies are telling us is what the IMF has told us, what the World Bank has told us, what other independent assessments have conveyed to us, and what we know. I mean, we know that these things need to be addressed. So it's a convergence. Yes. It's a convergence of views, which it just happens that the rating agencies put a number to it. So I think it's important to understand that. And secondly, I think we must be careful not to fall into a conspiracy theory here, because after all, there are 3 or 4 rating agencies, and they don't see the South African situation exactly the same, which shows that they're not colluding against South Africa. They are looking at the same facts, but understandably there could be some difference of emphasis. And after all, if we were really going to see this as some kind of conspiracy, then I don't know why the National Treasury and Labour and business, and we're all going out of our way to avert it. Because if it's just a conspiracy, then obviously we should ignore it. We can't ignore it. It's holding up a mirror to South Africa, and it is giving us some idea of what we need to do in order to move ahead.
Professor, as usual, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
Yeah.
That was economist Professor Raymond Parsons from the Northwest University School of Business and Governance, joining us here in our weekly slot of The Economy.
Yeah, we've been asking you the question there. The professor asked it. Answer it to some extent. What do you say about the question we asked you today? Ratings, downgrades, have they become a political tool? That's the question we've asked you. Let's have a look at some of the live tweets that have been coming in. Stalin says rating agencies target BRICS countries. Parliament in Britain and elections in the US are chaotic, but why focus on ANC and South Africa, says Stalin Konza. Figure Arnold says, Newsroom, downgrade, these essays avoidable if party stop clowning and start working and leaders stop stealing and start distributing, says Figo Arnold. Wow. Then Morris says, I smell a rat in these ratings. It looks like BRICS is being targeted. Morris Nsomi, that's his news. So keep it coming. We love to interact with you. We love to be on social media, and I can tell you it's been an interesting week in the news since the Comrades Marathon last week Sunday, the SABC's decision to not play violent protest vigils. Also, Ria Piecha continues to fight to hold office at the Commission. That continued this morning. There's also a lot of commotion about animals in the trends this week, from the zoo gorilla being shot to the 40 dead tigers that were found in Thailand, even transgender bathrooms at schools in the United States and here at Wits University in South Africa and elsewhere. Now, As always, we're joined by Roy Africa's Managing Director, Tonya Khoury, on a Friday morning. A very good morning to you, Tonya. Nice to be with us again.
Very nice to be with you, Evan.
As on a Friday, has it been any more chaotic week than usual, both in mainstream and social media?
Do you know what's so cool about this week is we've got some really good news stories on the charts. I don't know if you've been seeing the firefighters.
Yeah, no, we've carried it all week.
It's what an amazing story, what a proudly South African story. So we've had that, we've had the Comrades Marathon. That's what you're seeing on the charts now. Comrades Marathon, almost 40% of our social media conversation this week. And to put that into perspective, that's bigger than the NPA, President Jacob Zuma, and the Marikana story all combined. So very big good news story on the charts this morning. There's also a couple of new entries. We had the ANC election party list come out yesterday. That made big news, not so big in social media. We had ENCA banning the Duk. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, the staff there hasn't been happy for a while. That's kind of been in the news for the last year or so. Tell us quickly about what's happening with Uber. They made the top 10. What's that all about?
Well, Uber has been in the media for a long time. We've seen the taxi protests around Uber.
Yeah.
We've seen
attacks and all sorts.
Taxes coming in, exactly. So Uber often makes media headlines. It's been on our charts for a long time now. I think this is its fourth week in straight consecutive trending on the ROI Africa charts. Yeah, so Uber's there. What I found interesting was how did you see this Malawi bus story about the bus stuck on the edge of Tom Jones Road for people who had no bathing or toilet facilities for 30 days, and a lady gave birth. And what was so cool was seeing that all the election parties coming together and helping the people from the Malawi bus story. And we had the birth of Tom and Jones on the side of the road.
Tom and Jones, wow, wonderful. I love that. Quickly, let's move on internationally because, time is forever the enemy. Interesting. A boat full of migrants on the one hand capsizes and it gets zero media attention. Children are being shot in conflict zones every day.
Yes.
But when a gorilla gets shot, or a lion gets shot for that matter, or tigers get killed, the world stops and we are totally outraged. Do we care more about animals than people in today's world?
It really seems so. I've seen some interesting social media posts where people have been saying, well, firstly, can we give migrants a name and not have this detached naming convention for them called migrants?
I actually I try to force team members to call them refugees.
Yes.
But of course, the overwhelming media scrum calls it migrants.
Quite right.
And it has a certain political connotation as well.
Absolutely it does. And then, of course, we've seen also that people have got onto the moral high ground about animals in captivity, parenting, etc. with this gorilla issue. So the gorilla story is massive, 7.59% of our international news reporting, making it over 10 times the size of the migrant/refugee crisis over the past 7 days. And the migrants rescue situation comes in at half the percentage of transgender bathrooms.
Wow.
I mean, so that sort of puts it into perspective. We lost our minds.
I think we have. I think right next to it kind of shows us what's important. Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, that's got a lot of traction. You see the big chunk there, got a whole slice of the international news for the week. He might or might not have beaten her, choked her, and put a pillow over her head.
There seems to be that on social media particularly, there were leaked texts yesterday, I think. So they say that this was so-called leaked, but they think it's a publicity stunt as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it certainly seems like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard are making headlines all across the world. Bigger than Bill Cosby, bigger than Egypt hair, bigger than the Zika virus. So yeah, celebrity is big news.
Yeah, it is. We all seem to... Well, the thing that I don't understand is it's most men and women complain about their relationships or that they're single and that dating doesn't work today. The expectations are too high because everyone is subconsciously dating a celebrity. Would that be fair?
I'm not sure about that.
Well, before we wrap up, Prince. Nice that it's in purple there, Purple Rain, Prince, but... The autopsy's in now and opiates.
Yes, they've confirmed it's a drug overdose. And are we surprised?
No, I'm not surprised. I think if you're living in that sort of space, it almost goes without saying that you have to escape from the day-to-day hounding process that goes on.
Yeah, but certainly put Prince back on the charts this morning. He had gone off the charts for a couple of weeks. So Purple Rain is back. And the Tiger Temple story has just entered the charts right at the very top of the screen.
Yeah, that's massive.
That's horrific images.
It is absolutely horrific. But no, Barack Obama is under the pump. Let's just close up there. They say Bush's legacy was that he invaded Iraq. They say Obama's legacy will be that he allowed men into the women's toilets.
Go Obama.
Tonya, that's a little bit naughty on your part, actually. But is there anything else that kind of stands out that we have to kind of think about?
Well, I think that Donald Trump is, he's been the big leader on the international charts for a very, very long time. And I think what is astonishing is how we went from reality TV to reality. And Donald Trump is certainly a reality.
Yep, we love to hate him. We love somebody to hate in the media, don't we? We've become that kind of world. Anyhow, thank you very much, Tonya. Nice to always have you with us here. Tonya is the MD of Roy Africa. They bring us all the trends, keep us in the loop as to how things fit together and what's being talked about and who's being talked about for that matter. And then we can try and get it back to you out there. Anyhow, that's where we leave this hour. Let's go for a short weather update with Azwi, if I'm not mistaken.
Did you go to heaven?
Kelvin is the one who created all this.
What are you fighting over? Us?
If there is 10 million in my account, it will be in the front page the next day.
Do you have 10 million?
Oh, Jesus, hold my hand. Hallelujah.
It's happening right here on Question Time today.
Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News Channel.
Molemo, when pregnant with her first daughter, Relebogile knew that she wanted her daughter not to experience any identity issues. This is when she decided to look for toys that resembled Black as Beautiful.
I think for me, it was also just to get our girls to have some sense of identity, some sense of belonging.
I grew up having black and white dolls and going to a multiracial school. I did not really see color. So for me, it's this thing of she should actually know what her true identity is.
Join your host, Buleng Mulebadze, on Bophelong every Friday at 17:30.
Innovators all over Africa are using technology to solve the continent's problems.
We looked at all the different startup accelerators, and Hack Josie was born.
And governments are finding new ways to improve the lives of citizens.
We anticipate it will be in a position to handle a capacity of 20,000 logs per second.
On Network, we tell you about Africa's technology and social media scene. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
Health Talk unpacks healthy tips to help you to practice healthy living lifestyles.
Now, generally, type 1 is found mostly in children and young adults, and with type 2 diabetes is found mainly in the older generation and also with an issue of obesity.
Don't have second portions, and then I've brought this plate model to show that for both meals, your lunch, your dinner, half a plate should be vegetables.
Within sports, we see the spectrum itself. Most often we see minor head contact injuries, we call them.
Right.
But certainly in sports, the one that a lot of attention is paid to is concussion.
You see, you've got something, boom. Yeah. Right, it's uncontrolled. Whereas in soccer, when the guy hits the ball, it's controlled. His neck muscles are controlling it. And that's why they say, for instance, in rugby, the training should be to improve your neck strength.
For more on health, join your host, Dr. Selo Motaung, every Saturday from 9 to 10 a.m.
Friday, the 3rd of June 2016. This is Newsroom on SABC News, Channel 404, Jumbo Africa. And a very warm welcome to the final hour as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg to the rest of the African continent. I'm Elvis Presley.
And I'm Renee Vest, and we will be with you until 12 o'clock. We're also streaming live on YouTube with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. Now today we've been focusing on ratings agency Standard & Poor, who will announce its review of South Africa's credit rating today amid fears of looming downgrade. Both Standard & Poor's and Fitch have the country's credit rating at one notch above junk status.
So the question that we pose to you today, ratings agencies and threats of downgrades, are they perhaps being used as a political tool? You heard some of the comments from our analysts here during the course of today. I would like to know from you. You can let us know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on our Facebook page. But first, let's take a look at your news headlines. South Africa will know its fate on whether it has avoided junk status later today. The country is now ready for the 2016 municipal elections with 26.3 million eligible voters. And suspended National Police Commissioner Ria Piecha to launch her final bid to hold on to a job at the Claassen Board of Inquiry. Those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Very good morning to the both of you, as well as a good morning to everybody at home as well. This is what we've got for you in the sports this beautiful Friday morning.
Van Niekerk, those flailing arms of Van Niekerk, keeping clear by a metre, comes towards the line, watch the clock, it's a strong run, 44-2-0.
South African athletes headlining as in Rome, Wade van Niekerk, the men's 400-metre world champion, lays down a marker at the Rome Diamond League meet. And global soccer star Lionel Messi denies any knowledge of tax fraud, claiming he dedicated himself only to playing football. And that's it. World number ones Serena Williams and Novak Djokovic are through to the semi-finals of the French Open. All this and more we've got for you in the sports at 11:30. Be sure to stick around for that. But for now, it's back to the main desk for the news.
That's Kendall Makamate here with your sports news. We'll be back later, but right now with more on the news with Renee.
Well, thank you very much, Elvis. Credit rating agencies Standard & Poor is expected to announce whether South Africa has managed to avoid junk status later today. Should the country be slapped with a downgrade, neighbouring countries may suffer from the consequences. This is according to Chief Economist at Econometrics, Dr. Azmir Jamin. He says he expects the outcome not to be negative.
There's a very good chance that Standard & Poor's might say
that the National Treasury, led by Pravin Gordhan, has really gone out of its way to commit itself to fiscal consolidation and to tackling the problem of state-owned enterprises, and has also had significant discussions with business leaders to try and generate an improved growth path. But we're running up to election time, so a lot of the rhetoric that we hear is really just election rhetoric. Therefore, they may just give us another 6 months and say, we want to see whether what you say you're going to do is actually put into action in the interim.
In financial news, South Africa will know later today whether we have managed to avoid junk status. Global rating agency Standard & Poor will announce their decision this evening. They currently rank this country one notch above the sub-investment grade, or so-called junk status.
S&P are perhaps have demonstrated over the years they're not quite as well disposed towards us as Moody's have been. So, they'll cast a very critical eye. They've got a very long established presence in South Africa. They've done their homework, and I'm sure that when they come out, they will present what they think is a fair appraisal of the situation. And as I say, it's after ours. We have taken the view that we'll probably avoid downgrade as well. We agree with the Finance Minister. And what they'll maybe say is, along the lines of Moody's, let's give you 6 months. Let's see all of these good intentions that you've been talking about translated into something very, very tangible.
Many South Africans worry that the country is about to be condemned to junk status by the ratings agencies. There are also concerns that the economy is about to fall into a recession. The situation is also being exacerbated by a terrible drought, the most difficult domestic economic situation since the advent of democracy and the most unpredictable international circumstances in many years. The SABC's business news anchor, Francis Hurd, explains what credit ratings agencies are.
They are there to give each country, and they also do it for companies, things like that, a grade. Now, that grade is a mark of your credit worthiness. So in simple, it's if you've got a great grade, there's the triple A's right at the top. It means that if somebody lends you money, you are likely to pay back. No problem at all. If you head towards junk status, it means that you are becoming a credit risk. So investors use these grades to decide where they will put their money. If you've got a bad credit rating, it means that you may not pay them back. So that is the danger. And some investors will still invest in a country, in a company with a lower credit rating. But then they will demand huge interest rates, which is another problem.
The Independent Electoral Commission has certified the voters' roll for the 2016 municipal elections with a 26.3 million eligible voters. The number has increased by 2.6 million from the 2011 municipal elections. Registration for parties and independent candidates contesting the August 3rd elections closed yesterday. The IEC hailed its online registration system for candidates as a success despite some glitches.
It's a first for the IEC and for the continent. Online registration for candidates contesting the elections. However, it wasn't a smooth run.
As you'd expect, any system new will have glitches, but not anything fundamental so as to imperil the ability of parties to make the submissions they should.
However, Black First, Land First didn't get that opportunity to register and now want the courts to intervene.
We believe that it's unfair. We believe it goes against the fundamental rights to participate.
You've got to observe 14 days before the application can be considered. That 14 days is necessary to allow for those who may have an objection against the registration of the party.
For now, the IEC has to consolidate all the submissions, and for the first time in the history of municipal elections, will the ANC have competition in every single ward from both the DA and the EFF.
It's a key indicator. That's a very important thing, because South Africans now go into elections with a choice between two, really, between corruption and a non-corrupt government.
went through a process, a very intensive and thorough process, which was necessary, of course, that made us to get candidates that we can take back to the community.
While smaller parties are not contesting every ward and municipality.
All the metros, we are going to go for it. And we are definitely sure that this time we are well prepared.
We cannot. It is a municipal election. It's very difficult to get a candidate everywhere and to contest everywhere.
Meanwhile, it was a nail-biting moment for the ANC as it tried to submit just before the 5 p.m. deadline. This while aggrieved members protested outside the party's headquarters.
Others are here because they don't accept the outcome of an appeal process. Okay? Because some appealed and they told, listen, this is not a basis for appeal.
The IEC is adamant those who missed the deadline will not make it onto the ballot papers. Aldrin Simpier, SABC News, Johannesburg.
A confident Gauteng ANC says it will fill the 94,000 capacity F&B Stadium in Soweto tomorrow. This despite dissent among the ranks, with some members and supporters threatening to put a damper on the event. The party will be launching its provincial manifesto.
It's going to be a mammoth task, filling the close to 95,000 seats in the country's premier stadium. But the ANC Gauteng leadership believes it's done enough to rally the troops. It's been on the ground these past few weeks to drum up support for its manifesto launch.
They are already working hard, these volunteers, activists, and supporters, for a decisive victory for the ANC on the 3rd of August. The members and supporters of the ANC in Gauteng province are highly energized, very motivated, and ready for the rally. We expect to pack the stadium to full capacity.
But the councillor candidate lists are a hot potato.
Part of that is to communicate with all branches where their preferred candidate was not endorsed at all those levels. And I must say that those instances are very few.
That unhappiness played out on the doorsteps of the ANC headquarters.
While these supporters say they're willing to take it a step further and may boycott the launch of the Gauteng Manifesto on Saturday if their concerns are not addressed.
We don't want the councillor in our ward, and we're not going to the FNB. We want our demands met.
They chose a councillor for us, which we don't want.
Gauteng has 6.2 million registered voters, the highest in the country. The ANC has appealed for political tolerance in the run-up to the elections on the 3rd of August. Crisalda Lewis, SABC News.
The legal team of suspended National Police Commissioner Ria Pierre is currently wrapping up its final arguments at the Classen Board of Inquiry in Pretoria. Evidence leaders have accused Pierre of violating the country's constitution and breaching her oath of office. They believe she should be held responsible for the deaths of 34 miners who were shot by police in August 2012 during a strike at Lonmin Platinum Mine in Marikana. The evidence leaders are calling for her removal as the police boss. Pierre's team has, for its part, stressed that it's important to distinguish whether events at Marikana were under her control or that of Northwest Provincial Commissioner General Zukiswa Mombombo, who has since retired. The inquiry is currently on break. We will be bringing you the latest developments as they become available to us. Now, Eben has more on the story.
Yeah, we have some developments. Let's cross live to our reporter, Patricia Fisaki, who's at the Classen Board of Inquiry in Pretoria, where the inquiry now has taken a short break. A very good morning to you, Patricia. Thank you for joining us. Just give us a quick overview of what happened this morning.
Good morning, Eben. As you have just mentioned, we are on a short break. Of course, it means that Judge Claassen may walk in at any time and resume the proceedings here. What has been happening since this morning, of course, we know that General Pierre's legal team is on the floor. They are presenting their closing arguments, and we have heard her advocate, and that is Advocate Sillo, who is representing her, really trying very hard to counter the arguments that have been brought forward yesterday in the closing arguments of the evidence leaders and, of course, the lawyers of the injured and arrested miners, as well as the lawyers who are representing the deceased miners. And basically what she was saying, one of the strong points that she was driving today is that there was no concealment of evidence. And this goes back to what the evidence leaders have been saying and what they concluded yesterday in their closing arguments, that they've got substantial belief that the reason why General Ria Pierre became evasive during the Farlam Commission when she testified was because she was trying to conceal certain crucial evidence, and she was not being truthful, basically accusing her of lying under oath. And then they got to the point where they actually accused her of violating the Constitution, breaking her oath of office, and, of course, violating the police's code of conduct. And in that way, they wrapped up their closing arguments, saying that there's substantiated proof that actually make them believe that she is not fit to hold office and that she should be dismissed as the country's top cop. And of course now we're hearing her side of the story through her legal representatives, basically just saying that all the evidence that have been brought forward by the evidence leaders cannot be substantiated and cannot be the probable, believable version for the judge to obviously make his conclusions on this matter.
Patricia, before I let you go, there have been talk by the lawyers representing the Marikana miners, talk of political interference. Do we have any idea what they are basing these allegations on?
But what they're actually driving to here is one of the points of reference that was stipulated by President Jacob Zuma when he actually set up this board of inquiry, and that was to investigate, whether there was concealment. And what the lawyers are actually arguing is that the reason why there was concealment of evidence is exactly because of political interference that could have actually been the root of why the suspended police commissioner may have endorsed the so-called tactical option. That is the option that was actually approved to disperse and disarm the miners on the 16th of August 2012. And basically what they're saying is that there has been evidence that proves that there has been pressure that came from the top ranks of some of the country's politicians down to General Ria Pierre. Basically, in a nutshell, what they're saying that they believe that Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa may have influenced the matter. He may have influenced the former police minister, and that is Natim Tetwa, and the former mining minister Susan Shabangu, to put pressure on the suspended police commissioner Ria Pierre to take that decision where we saw the miners being mowed down by the police on the 16th of August 2012. So they're saying that if that pressure did not exist, she probably would not have taken the decision to endorse that decision to have the miners dispersed. But of course, Evan, as you can see, everybody is coming back, so we're about to start. It's back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Patricia. On point and on the spot. Right there, I can tell you that the defence, that's Ria Pierre's defence team, they will continue their presentation until this afternoon, when they are hopeful of closing, of wrapping up their arguments today. We'll have another update in our later shows, and hopefully we'll be able to put forward the entire defence argument by the time they wrap up late this afternoon. But let's go back to Rene on the news desk for another update on Vuwani, I understand.
Well, thank you very much, Eben. The bail hearing of 24 suspects from Vuwani and surrounding villages is underway in two separate magistrates' courts in Tuyando in Limpopo. They have been arrested for public violence and arson. Among the suspects are the Makado Municipality Ward Councillor and a teacher. Over 20 schools have been torched and vandalized by the protesters who do not want their areas to be incorporated into a new municipality in the Vembe region. Government is to implement a policy to govern the administration and operation of traditional circumcision. Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Des van Rooyen says there will be a statute allowing government to criminalise certain activities happening at initiation schools. The minister was speaking ahead of the winter initiation season. The minister condemned traditional leaders and police for assisting in closing illegal initiation schools, rather commended. He also called for South Africans to report illegal initiation schools. Now we'll be taking a short break, but stay tuned for more news after this.
A very good afternoon. You're watching the Midday Report.
Lunchtime news amplified.
But for now, this is what they call home. Their hope to shift to a higher ground seems to be against the tide.
Midday Report provides you with more than just news stories.
I just want Port Elizabeth to know that they own a world-class theatre.
Good afternoon. You're with the news at 1 in the headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. This is News Live. I'm Natasha Thorpe. Let's take a quick look at what's coming up in your headlines.
Good afternoon and welcome to A View from the House.
For all things news, tune in to Midday Report weekdays at 12 noon only on the SABC News Channel.
Welcome back. Time for us now to take a more regional look at the news. Our young entrepreneurs from all over the country have gathered at the Civic Theatre in Bloemfontein for the 4th Youth Entrepreneurs Expo. The aim of the expo is to create a platform for young entrepreneurs to network and create opportunities for future expansion of their businesses. Now, our very own Palesa Moeti joins us from the Youth Expo. I understand that she has a couple of guests. I understand you have a couple of guests with you, but just set the scene for us before you start your interview.
Good morning, Ian. Yes, indeed, we are here in Bloemfontein outside the Civic Theatre, where the Young Entrepreneurs Conference and Expo is happening. Now, over 200 young entrepreneurs from all over the country are taking part in this expo. Today is the second and the last day of the expo. Now, this is obviously, as you said, where they're able to network, form links, exchange testimonies, as well as hear presentations from various government agencies that are responsible for small business development, as well as financial institutions. And they're also hearing presentations from educational institutions that offer short courses as well as much longer courses on business development, business management, as well as financial management. Now, joining me right now is the CEO and founder of the company that is responsible for putting all of this together. Now, before we speak to her, later in about an hour's time, we'll be joined, or rather the conference will be joined by the MEC for Economic Development here in the Free State, Mr. Sam Mashinini. But right now we are talking to Matefo Morakeng from the company that is responsible for putting this all together. Matefo, tell us about this expo. What was the idea behind it?
The idea behind it was, actually it came 4 years ago, where we wanted a platform where young entrepreneurs can come and converge once a year, where they will share stories, they will showcase their products, and then they will learn from each other, and also to showcase those that are making it in business, to say how are they doing it, and how can we also help one another in terms of mentorship, because we also believe that mentorship doesn't necessarily have to be from older ones. Even young ones can actually be able to mentor each other. So that was the whole idea, and also to say, you know what, every year let's come back and say what have we been doing throughout the year. So that was solely for this, the reason for this platform.
Like you said, it's been around for 4 years. What are you seeing from, the difference from when it initially started and its progression through the years?
When we started, we actually had about 30 people, year one. Yes, and from there we've been struggling, but making sure that we're actually going to go ahead with it every year. And we made sure that every year, June, first week, Thursday and Friday, they come here. And from 30 now to say this time around, day one, which was yesterday, we had more than 350. And then today, which is day two, we have over 200. So for us, this is really progress, because we also have those that actually are succeeding. That say, you know what, we have come here to this platform, and I didn't know what I wanted my business to do. I went back because I took what I learned from this platform, and I actually went and implemented it. Now I know what is it that I have to be doing, and also I have now support of people that I can call on to when I need assistance. So this platform also helps in that regard. So we are really happy because we also showcase success stories of the very same platform that we are at.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now we'll also be joined by Ntabeleng Dipkodzi, who is a young woman who's in business and who's really breaking new ground in what she's doing. Ntabeleng, you have ventured into a very bold business. Tell us about what you're doing.
We are getting into the cooperative banking space. We got our banking license in December, where we're saying Stockfel in South Africa make 50 billion. This is money that black people, it's cash that rotates amongst ourselves as black people. But we don't see anything with that money. So we decided then, because of the cooperative banking license or act, is that they use the Stockfel model to say this is what the black people understand. Let's take what already exists and regulate it. So it's very highly regulated. We are regulated under the Cooperative Bank Development Agency. So what we then decided is we're sitting on 300 members that put money every month. So we save 1,000 rand every month. We buy shares for 10,000 rand. And with that money, we've done something spectacular where we're saying for entrepreneurs that are struggling in our country, let us fund those people, because that is the only way to create jobs in South Africa. And with that, then with financial backing, that is the only way then we can see that small businesses can grow, and then they can start concentrating on the growth in their businesses.
Now, the Global Entrepreneur Monitor released a report which, the statistics are quite grim. It says that 50% there's a 50% decline in the number of South Africans wanting to venture into business. And last year alone, 62% of South African new businesses closed shop. But you're starting this. Why? And aren't you scared?
Definitely. Failure does not exist in my life, or in those that have joined, I guess. Statistics really say that in the small businesses or startups fail in the first 1,000 years of starting. So I can't believe when they say 62% fail. And most of it comes from access to markets. It is really tough to be in business and to break through the doors and say, this is who I am and this is what I'm doing. And the second one on the GEM report, I think it's funding. That's why, hence, we have the financial institution that we're saying we have development finance institutions in the country, we have the commercial banks in the country, but none of them are talking to entrepreneurs. When you're talking about DFIs, so which are the development finance institutions, for your purchase order, that will take 3 months, whereas you need to start the job next week. So with us being in the sector and living entrepreneurship every day, that's when we realized we can't always be waiting for government to do things for us. Or more than government, we can't be waiting for other people to do things for us. If we say we are serious about business, we need to start investing our own money. And with collectivity, once we are collective, united voice with our finance backing, nothing can stop us, and that is the only way.
Now, lastly, 5 years from now, in terms of growth and in terms of job creation, where would you like to see yourself?
Right now, as I'm talking to you, we've already created 4 jobs. And this is something that was registered in December. And now we are, in June? And we've created 4 jobs. And 5 years, collectively, would have saved R1 billion. So you can imagine with 5 years, R1 billion, the numbers must grow. Hence, we're calling on more people to join us so that we reach that target of 5 billion. And here's the thing. When we have R1 billion that is saved for banking services, can you imagine the kind of jobs that we're going to create, the kind of businesses that we're going to support? Because internally we'll create jobs, but through that fund, then we get to support businesses that will then create more jobs, then the multiple, the ripple effect will happen there. So we can only imagine how far we'll go as a collective. And I'd like to call on South Africans to come on board. And yes, there is fear. There's a matter of trust because people are saying, but Tavlin, this is my money. How do I know that we can trust you? It's highly regulated. You know, you can check on us. It's not something that is overnight. It's not a Ponzi scheme. It's not a quick scheme. So we're not looking for those kind of people. We're looking for people that have a long-term view and a long-term investment in place. And they're creating jobs for their kids and their unborn kids. Awesome.
Okay, then just quick, lastly, your advice to young entrepreneurs.
My advice to startup entrepreneurs, I'm saying to you, no is not an answer. Do not take no from anybody else. And you must remember, whoever that says no to you, they will tell you lies. They have their own reasons for saying no to you. So don't stop just because 5 people said no to you. The second advice I'd like to give to people that are already in business, for somebody like me, we need to break away from supply and delivery, from catering, from stationery. And I'm not saying there's something wrong with it. I'm saying we need to be the black industrialists of this generation. We need to be the ones that create wealth. And for us to do that, we need to participate where black people are not represented. And that is, it's this generation, it's us that we have been waiting for to make such a change.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Palestine.
Well, that is Ntabeleng Dikotsi, encouraging a generation of black industrialists. With that, it's back to you in the studio, Yeben.
Thank you, Palesa. Very nice interviews there. It's wonderful to see young people with so much chutzpah, as they call it. That was Palesa Moeti, of course, at the Youth Expo in Bloemfontein. Now we are going to go to Westbury in Johannesburg. Now the residents in this part of Johannesburg have taken their fight against drug and violence to the streets. They've handed over a memorandum to the Firetown Police. The neighbourhood has seen a spate of drug-related killings linked to gang turf wars. Just last week, a man was found dead on a nearby soccer field in the area.
A call to action. A community fed up with drugs and gang-related violence. Marching through the streets of New Clare and Westbury, notorious for drug peddling.
They are overpowered by drugs. Every second flat is a drug flat. Every second house is a drug flat. And the scourge has overtaken the community. So we're really upset with it.
Enough is enough. We're tired of drugs and senseless killings of our children. We are very tired. We are taking a stand now.
The local drug committee says drug users are becoming younger and younger.
From 9 years old right up till 50 years old are using drugs here. They're even taking it to the schools now. This must stop.
This is where most of the killings have taken place. At least 8 people have died in gang-related violence in the past 3 months. Among the victims, 42-year-old Wayne Johnson. He and his girlfriend were shot at 2 weeks ago. The woman survived, but Johnson died in hospital.
This was a great shock, and I must say that it was almost like a knife being really pushed through your heart. And we're still trying to find reasons behind why it happened, what was the real reason behind it. We can't say.
Police have stepped up patrols in the area and have appealed to the community to assist in investigations.
As a community, things happen in our community, but our community doesn't speak. Even when we as the CPF or as the Sector Crime Forum approach people and talk to people and ask them to give us names, it is difficult for people to do that.
We really want to go out and ask the people, don't be faceless, come forward and tell us who these people is, that we can put them behind bars, because remember, we made a lot of positive arrests.
a community fighting to reclaim its streets. It's a message that resonates with young and old alike. They are all affected. And this being Child Protection Week, this troubled community hopes their pleas for a safer neighborhood won't fall on deaf ears. Mangoba Mtudu, SABC News, Westbury. Now, former AWB Secretary General and Gelofte Volk Republikeiner leader Andre Visagie is expected to make an urgent application, a bail application that is, in the Kimberley High Court. Visagie was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment in July of 2014 for the illegal possession of firearms and ammunition. He's currently out on 10,000 Rand bail and was supposed to have started serving his sentence earlier this week on Wednesday. Now reporter Puleng Mudupe joins us from the Kimberley High Court. Very good morning to you, Puleng. Just give us a quick idea as to what's happening there this morning.
Well, court was supposed to start at 11 o'clock this morning, but now we have been told that it's going to start only at 2 o'clock because as it is now, they are still searching for the documents that are needed for the appeal to go ahead. It's understandably that the documents are not stored here at the court, they are stored at the other building. So, yeah, court is starting at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
And just elaborate quickly for us, what are the demands of Andre Visagie, and then what are the state saying in reply to that?
According to Visagie, he's saying that the state was negligent because now there's no way that the state has, they haven't gone out of their way to find another suspect in the matter. Because now, according to him, there was no way that he could stash the weapon, the chest that contained the weapons at his home. He could have, if the chest belonged to him, you could have stashed it at some other location, not at his house. That chest, it contained home manufactured firearms. It contained also ammunition and a panga and also some explosive device. So, but the state is saying that there's no any other evidence that Visagie doesn't have a leg to stand on because as it is, he needs to prove that the chest didn't belong to him. But as it is, he doesn't have anything.
Just quickly take us back to the finding that, or how they found the weapons and how this case then transpired to now almost 2 years later, he's still not serving his sentence.
The weapons were found stashed at his home, and Visagie was charged together with his son, the underage son, but now the son was acquitted of all charges. And the weapons, they were found stashed inside his house, and the chest contained the ones that I mentioned, like the manufactured gun, the 9mm gun, and he appeared in court before and he was sentenced to 5 years. But Visagie appealed to the Supreme Court of Appeal that found him guilty as well. According to the court, they said that there was no way that the Kimberley court could have made a mistake in terms of sentencing Visagie. So he lodged this appeal, and on Wednesday he was supposed to go to jail because now the Kimberley High Court, they refused to give him an extension of his appeal while he is waiting for the outcome.
Puleng, thank you very much for that update outside the Kimberley High Court. That is our reporter there, Puleng Mudupe. She's just told us that, the case against Andre Visagie, who's a Gelofte Volk Republikeiner leader, as well as a former AWB Secretary General, that case will now only start at 2 o'clock this afternoon in the Kimberley High Court. They will give us an update then in our afternoon shows as to what transpires. Well, Visagie is supposed to have started his prison term on Wednesday already. He'll be back in the court. We'll keep you updated on this very channel. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, Kendall Mahamati will give us a final sports update today.
Bophelong, we celebrate those who take strides doing good and changing the world.
I really think that education has to be revisited, and it's an integral part of teaching young people skills of the future.
There's always light at the end of the tunnel.
I think that the treatment should be made available, actually, because it's costly. Growth hormones are very costly.
Where there is a challenge, we bring hope.
I'm alive. And the brain tumor is gone.
Join your host Buleng Mulabati every Friday at 17:30 for more uplifting stories.
Hello and welcome back. I am Kendall Makhamati. I've got your sports on Newsroom. Top of our stories for this bulletin. South Africa's medal prospects at this year's Olympic Games stay looking strong as Caster Semenya, Wade van Niekerk and Sinet Viljoen put in winning performances at the Rome Diamond League meet last night. Akani Simbine came 6th in the 100-meter sprint, which was won by Justin Gatlin in a time of 9.93 seconds.
It's going to be close, but I fear it's just starting to slip away.
The real star of the night, though, was Ethiopian long-distance sensation Almaz Ayana, who narrowly missed breaking compatriot Tirunesh Dibaba's 5,000-meter record by 1.44 seconds. She stopped the clock at 14 minutes 12.59 seconds. It was an IAAF Diamond League record. It was a meeting record at the Italian one-day showpiece, and it was the fastest time run this year. It was also the second fastest time ever run.
Neil Sabridis with Semenya on the crown of the bend, cutting loose, beginning to move away.
Caster Semenya looks an unstoppable force as she moves closer and closer to the Rio 2016 Olympic Games. The South African equaled her 2016 world-leading time of 1 minute 56.64 seconds set in Rabat, Morocco, in registering her third win in as many IAAF Diamond League outings.
Comfortably indeed, 1:56.65, a 59.9 second lap after the opener, where the pacemaker went through in 56.7.
Wade van Niekerk, the IAAF World Championship Beijing 2015 400-meter winner and the fastest man in the world last year over one lap of the track, reminded the world of his true gold medal credentials. Leading from 200 meters on, he crossed the line in just 44.19 seconds, ominously close to his sub-44 seconder last year that has made him the fourth fastest man of all time in the distance.
Comes towards the line, watch the clock, it's a strong run, 44.20.
Javelin star Sinet Viljoen threw 61.95 meters to record a second Diamond League victory of the season to round off a perfect trio of performances by South African athletes and a chilly Rome.
That's surely well beyond 60 meters. That might take the lead. 61.95, and she takes the lead.
Now, world number one Novak Djokovic has marched into the semi-finals of the second Grand Slam of the year at the French Open in Roland Garros. Djokovic was near clinical against Czech Tomas Berdych, keeping his hopes of a maiden title in Paris very much alive.
On a 10-match winning streak against Berdych, the top seed was the obvious favourite going into this quarter-final. And the Serb did not disappoint. He needed just over half an hour to bag the opening set. Djokovic earned 2 service breaks as he launched a barrage of cross-court attacks on the Berdych backhand that the Czech just didn't have an answer for. 7th seed Berdych was a touch more fluent on his serve in the second set, keeping pace with his opponent, but a wily Djokovic used the drop shot to perfection, grabbing the second in the final game. Play was suspended for a few minutes during the third set to the frustration of the players with the pair on 3 games apiece. But it didn't deter a rampant Djokovic, who earned the decisive break in the 8th game and promptly served out the match, cruising to his 30th major semi-final. The score 6-3, 7-5 and 6-3. Women's world number one Serena Williams had to graft for her spot in the semis against Kazakhstan's Yulia Putintseva. The top seed struggled to regain her rhythm after a rain interruption early in the first set. And Putintseva didn't need to be asked twice. Taking full advantage of the unusually high Williams' unforced error count, the Kazakhstani confined her opponent to the backcourt and varied her game. She got the decisive break in the 11th game of the opening set and served it out with ease. Both players were inconsistent in the second set, but it was the unseeded Putintseva who didn't make the best of her opportunities. She failed to hold serve in the crucial final game of the set, gifting it to the three-time champion with a double fault, forcing a decider. And like we have seen numerous times in her career, Williams made a complete U-turn in the third set. The American charged out of the blocks, racing to a 5-love lead before the world number 60 even got on the scoreboard. And the 21-time Grand Slam champion made no mistake, eventually sealing a 5-7, 6-4, 6-1 victory and a berth in the last four. Samantha Mari, SABC News.
Now, an up-and-coming para-dressage rider is determined to successfully represent South Africa at the 2020 Paralympic Games in Tokyo. 17-year-old Tamsin Bauer, who suffers from cerebral palsy, was once told she'd never be able to walk. But this determined young lady defied the odds and is now a bright prospect on the Paralympic front.
A gutsy 5-year-old Tamsin took on horse riding lessons, a decision that changed her life forever. Not only did she begin to walk, she also started to make her mark as a promising equestrian. In 2014, she was spotted by dressage coach Kate Laird. Laird took her under her wing, and Tamsin won the International Federation for Equestrian Sports' Grade 1B Individual Championships 2 years in a row. She's also on Dressage SA's reserve list for the Paralympics in Rio de Janeiro in September, after having qualified in Belgium earlier this year. She's worked hard for what she's achieved, physically and mentally.
You have to have determination. You need to want to do this. You have to ride every day, and it's a lot of training. So you need to have the motivation and determination in yourself to do this.
For Tamsin, it's also about the bigger picture. Apart from flying her country's flag internationally, she likes to create awareness of the benefits of horse riding.
Knowing that I started not being able to walk, and horse riding helped me do that, and hopefully inspiring others to do the same. And horse riding is very therapeutic, so if others can also learn by horses, that will be amazing.
Tamsin's never say die attitude caught Laird's eye 2 years ago. Their partnership has since gone from strength to strength.
Tammy's attitude is so strong and so determined, and that's what made me pick her as a pupil. She's got the ability to get back up, get back on, and just carry on no matter what happens. So if we have a bad day, Tammy comes back fresh the next day, positive attitude, and carries on.
Laird believes in Tamsin and her future.
I have high hopes for Tammy, and that she's definitely an Olympic candidate for later. She's young, she's talented, and she's got it.
Tamsin's focus is now on the World Equestrian Games in Montreal in Canada in 2018. After that, a Paralympic medal in Tokyo would be the icing on the cake. Liesel Zankel, SABC News.
And that is how we close off the sports bulletin for this week. I mean, that's determination and inspiration personified, even.
I'll definitely keep an eye out on her in 2020. Yeah. Tell you what, inspirational story. But that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Now, it's time for us to wrap it up this weekend. We've asked you this question today. Send it in, because we also put some of the best comments. We'll bring them back on Monday in our first comment slot. So, ratings agencies, that was the focus today. Anyhow, time now for our Friday performance. Now, last week we had Tennille Nelson in studio with Elvis Presley. No less. Tennille Nelson. She was in studio. Oh, she had a lot to say. Very interesting young lady. This is what she had to say to Elvis.
Tennille Nelson is a South African singer, songwriter and guitarist who recorded her debut album, Unearth, in 2009, which was produced by the one and only Salilo Salota. She says a very unique sound of both organic and modern influences such as Nina Simone, Amy Winehouse, Angelique Kidjo, Sade and Salif Keita, just to name a few. Now, she's currently working on her second album. Her first release is Down to the River, which is a modern twist to her organic sound and is set to add a new dimension and a very colourful dimension to the South African music landscape. She joins us now in studio. Tennille, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
First and foremostly, tell us about your album Unearth and how it influenced your career.
Unearth was a very special album. It was my first works of music, and music that I had lived with for a very long time. It has definitely made its mark in my heart and in the hearts of others that have listened to it. It's a very honest and meaningful album.
You've now released your first single from the new album. Tell us about that.
Coming album.
And what music lovers can really expect from this album.
Okay, so from this album is going to be a lot more vibrant, still very thought-provoking, and it's really an evolving stage of my life, my career, and just as a person and where I've come from. So I'm really excited to take my listeners through this journey with me. The new single is called Down to the River.
Yes.
Yes, and it's about a song that speaks about a girl that has been hurt by love, and through that experience, her soul has been washed, and she's found a cleansingness and an awakening and a realization. So that's what the song is about. And I think it's a very emotional-driven, but really radio-friendly at the same time, which is why I'm so excited to also get it out there and have it heard.
Well, we're going to go down to the river just now, but tell us, where can people get hold of your music, and where can they see you perform if they want to?
Well, I would say visit my website, www.taneelnelson.com. It would lead you to all my social media platforms, and there I could keep you updated on performances. The single is available now on iTunes, and go and check it out.
Well, Taneil Nelson, thank you so much for joining us, and let's go down to the river with your new single. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
That was Taneil Nelson. She's a South African singer, songwriter, and guitarist. Very talented. Listen to this.
Been in love with you, my baby, but I think I'm going crazy. If I need you, won't you save me? You know I hate to love you, I hate to love you. If you're not with me, you're against me. I'll pull the trigger, don't you tempt me. You took me down, down, baby, and I could drown, drown, baby. You took me down to the river and washed my soul. You took me down to the river and washed my soul. You took me down to the river and washed my soul. You took me down to the river and washed my soul. You took me down to the river and washed my soul. You took me down to the river and washed my soul. You took me down to the river and washed my soul. You took me down to the river and washed my soul.
News Today provide news updates giving a wealth of knowledge. Breaking stories and crossing live for you. We follow business developments intensely. Experts and analysts tackle all challenging issues for you. We cover stories locally and abroad to keep you informed. We cover all sporting codes just for you. We are sure to give you weather to be ready for the day. Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
There are no permanent enemies or friends in politics.
I agree with Professor Siepe fully. Do people still preserve the meaning?
They have no clue what it meant to be black under apartheid.
Acting Police Commissioner Phahlane dropped a bombshell in Parliament this week when he suggested there could be a possible cover-up. What do you think of this story? What kind of problems were those, Vuyo, if I can just get in there quickly?
Every corner or sphere of our lives has become a site of struggle.
Watch Media Monitor with me, Alicia Jali, Sundays at 9 a.m. only on the SABC News channel.
Even though people didn't know about Zika virus until now, this disease was discovered in Uganda in 1947 and was isolated from human in Nigeria in 1968. In 2015,